Previously on episode 1. Darn that blasted sunlight, Winifred muttered, her eyes not even open yet. They snapped open a second later and she was on her feet. There is no sun in purgatory! Sisters, what is happening? No one answered her call. Sisters, come here! Nothing. That's when Winifred realized this was not her cottage. Where have I been sent? And where are my sisters? Winifred journeyed downstairs to investigate. Upon passing a mirror on the wall, she did a double-take, having seen her 16-year-old self for but a moment. Winifred shook her head and chalked it up to being in such a strange house. When she descended the staircase, she saw a woman sitting at a table with a cup of tea. She smiled at Winifred, and Winnie almost fell backwards. This woman looked like someone she only had brief memories of. Her mother. "Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well?" she asked. Yes, I did, Mother," Winifred responded hesitantly. "You sound so nervous, dear. Is it because your journey begins today?" her mother asked. "Pray tell, what journey dost thou refer to?" Winifred asked in confusion, and her mother laughed. "Your Pokemon journey, of course, dear. You get your first partner today, and I can't wait to see who you choose. Professor Oak said he's going to let you pick from special Pokemon." "What is a Pokemon?" Winifred asked. "And where are my sisters?" "Sweetie, you've grown up with Pokemon around, and you're the only child in this house. Are you feeling all right, Winifred?" "Not in the slightest," she replied. "Well, why don't you go over to Professor Oak's and get your new partner? I'm sure the nerves will subside after that." Her mother smiled and ushered her out of the house. "I rather doubt that, Mother." Winifred huffed and dusted off her dress. "May as well find that old tree's house. Perhaps I will find some answers there, and perhaps my sisters as well." Winifred started walking around the town until she saw a sign that read, "Pallet Town in the Kanto region." In that moment, she knew she was not in purgatory anymore. She wasn't sure where she was exactly, but in this moment she was in Pallet Town in the Kanto region, wherever the heck that was. Winifred found the exit to the town and went to walk into the grass when, "Wait! Do not go in that grass!" a male voice screeched from behind her. Winifred jumped back with a scream as a man ran up to her in a white coat. "Winifred, you need a Pokemon before you venture out into the wild grass. Wild Pokemon would attack you and you'd be in critical condition before you can say Pokeball. Now come with me and let's get your partner." "You must be that Professor Oak that Mother spoke of," Winifred guessed. "That's right, Winifred Sanderson, and you're embarking on a very important journey today," Professor Oak said as he led her to a large building. "Here's my lab. Let's go inside." Winifred followed Professor Oak inside, and her blood immediately began to boil. There was a young man at the head of the room who resembled someone she hated more than anyone in the world, Reverend Trask. This very well could have been his son, and what a joy it would be to suck out his soul. But she had no sisters to help her, nor her precious book anymore. So all Winifred could do was stand next to him, listen to Professor Oak talk about what it means to begin a journey as a Pokemon trainer, and resist the urge to electrocute the boy. "So, Winifred, you may now choose your Pokemon. Your new partner rests in one of those 3 Pokeballs over there on the table." Professor Oak gestured to the balls he mentioned. "Must I?" she asked, and he nodded. "Very well." Winifred examined the cards that matched the corresponding Pokemon. There was the normal type Slackoth that had the ability Truant. It can only attack every other turn. Useless. A grass and poison type Pokemon called Gloom. Winifred would only want it for potions she could not brew. She found the last ball and found the electric type Pokemon called Manectric. This one would work beautifully with her own magic. Winifred picked up Manectric's Pokeball, and when prompted by Oak to name it, she chose Shock. Jeffrey picked up the Slackoth. "I'm not afraid to raise a challenging Pokemon," he bragged. "Now let's battle them." "I beg your pardon?" Winifred asked as Jeffrey sent out his Pokemon. "Toss the ball and it will open, sending out your Pokemon," Professor Oak instructed. Winifred threw her ball, and the large blue and yellow dog burst into the room. Shock crouched and awaited command. Professor Oak told Winifred about how to battle Pokemon, so she gave it a shot. Shock used Thunder Wave, paralyzing Jeffrey's Slackoth. Shock then proceeded to use Tackle until the Slackoth had fainted. Winifred sneered at the angry and defeated Jeffrey. She liked this electric dog. Geoffrey stormed off without so much as another word. Now, Winifred, you may journey up to Viridian City and explore that town. Come back here after you've bonded with Shock for a bit. I'll need to give her a checkup. Very well, if I must return, Winifred exhaled. She called Shock back into her Pokeball and left the building. Winifred and Shock battled a few wild Pokemon on their way up to Viridian City. It was a quaint town with only a few houses. Winifred would hardly call it a city. She found a place called the Pokemon Center that specialized in healing Pokemon, so Shock got revitalized. Winifred found the local merchant's shop and walked inside to browse. As soon as she stepped inside, the merchant flagged her down. "Are you one of Professor Oak's pupils?" he asked her. "In a manner of speaking," Winifred said, raising a brow. "Would you mind taking this parcel to him? It's important he gets it by tomorrow, and I can't leave the shop unattended." The merchant placed a box on the counter. "Do I look like a messenger?" she asked in annoyance. "Well, of course not, but I think there's something in there for Oak's pupils," he replied. "Please, a young lady like you would be able to get it there much faster than me." "All right, that compliment bought the man a favor." "Just this once," she said, took the parcel, and left the store. Her reflection in the glass of the door was briefly her younger self again. Upon walking back down to Pallet Town, night had fallen. Winifred chose to spend one more night in the house she woke up in. She hoped that when she woke up, this would have been a nightmare and she'd be in the cottage in purgatory with her sisters. When the sun woke her up, she knew this was in fact not a dream. Winifred took the package to Professor Oak, and he was pleased to see an order of Pokeballs. Winifred received 5 of them, and a talking book called a Pokedex. Professor Oak told her to fill its pages with as many Pokemon as possible. When she left, the Pokedex beeped. "Hello, Winifred Sanderson. It took you way longer to get me than it did for our last 2 participants in this trial," it said. "Trial?" she asked. "Yes, somehow you're here for redemption testing. You did a selfless thing on Earth, sacrificing your powers to return to your sisters, but I don't think that's enough to give you a trial," it said. "Redemption testing? I earned such a task?" she asked. "Somehow, but I'm not going to tell you everything about this right now. I reserve the right to give information as I feel necessary as your observer. Right now, all you need to know is you get to catch 1 Pokemon for every new area you visit, and if your Pokemon is defeated in battle, it dies and you won't be able to heal it like other trainers. Which with you at the helm, I can see happening a lot. I do not need such insolence from a strange book like thee." Winifred tightened her grip on it. "Where are my sisters?" "Them? They're fine. But you've got to earn your way back to them. You've got a long journey ahead of you, Winifred Sanderson, and I'll be watching your every move." "How do I get back?" she asked it. "All in due time. Right now, you just need to go catch some Pokemon." The Pokedex went silent after that. Winifred had received a bag from her mother, and she shoved the Pokedex into the bottom with a huff. She walked up Route 1, and there she ran into a Krabby. It took a little work with Shock to weaken it, but when Winifred threw her first Pokeball, it clicked, and she heard a muffled voice from her bag. "Krabby has been registered to your Pokedex. Perfect first encounter for you," the Pokedex beeped. Winifred shook the bag. "Welcome to our little coven, Krusty," Winifred said. Up they walked to Viridian City, where she found a side route where she ran into a small purple rat with buck teeth. Winifred let Shock paralyze it, then she threw a ball, and click! The muffled voice piped up again. "Rattata has been registered to your Pokedex. Is this a relative of yours? Looks like you in the teeth," the Pokedex beeped. "Quiet, you!" Winifred shook her bag again, a little more violently. "Peter, you will be a fine addition to our little group." Winifred started to walk up to Route 2 and got caught by a man who wanted to teach her how to catch a Pokemon. She held up her 3 Pokeballs and walked on. She ran into a huge beast with a flower on its neck called Meganium and tried to catch it. Shock had it paralyzed, but Peter wanted to show off his strength and ended up knocking it out. Her Pokedex laughed in her bag. Winifred looked at Peter and exhaled. "Thy power is great, but I wanted to catch that creature. Do not do that again," she criticized him. Peter nodded apologetically before going back into his ball. Winifred approached a dark forest and walked into the brush. She stepped on what she thought was a pine cone, but it was a Pokemon. It attacked, but Shock managed to weaken it, and Winifred caught it. She named him Douglas. Winifred started walking through the forest, where she picked up a couple of items, then ran into a Pokemon trainer. She got a horrible tingling up her spine as the battle started. It was the feeling of dread. Her opponent sent in a Dugtrio that Krusty went up against. Winifred had him use bubbles as many times as he could. She also had to use potions that she bought from the merchant to heal him. Krusty managed to take out the Dugtrio, but then came the Hitmontop. The Pokemon killed Krusty with one hit from the move Revenge. Winifred was shocked when her Krabby died in front of her. Shock came in next and used Thunder Wave. Winifred had Shock use Howl to increase her attack, but it did no good. After hitting Hitmontop with Tackle, Revenge was boosted and Shock died next. Peter didn't even get a chance to make a dent before he was taken away. Douglas lasted 2 hits before he was killed. Winifred felt dizzy. She dropped to her knees, then heard the Pokedex beep. Oh yeah, when you lose all of your Pokemon, you have to start over if you have less than 7. See you at the beginning again. Winifred passed out a moment later. She woke up in the bed in the strange house and began the song and dance all over again. This time she went straight to the lab and went to grab Shock, but there were 3 new Pokemon she had to choose from. There was no getting Shock back. There was the normal type Ditto, a pink blob that only knew how to turn into other Pokemon. Not that one. A Registeel that could only blow itself up to attack. A big dumb brick that she wanted nothing to do with. The last choice was the water-type Horsey, a small seahorse. Winifred begrudgingly chose Horsey and named her Ariel. She beat Jeffrey again, delivered the package again, got some Pokeballs in her obnoxious Pokedex, which immediately tried to taunt her. Wow, you're doing so much worse than your sisters, it laughed, then beeped. Whoops, didn't mean to say that yet. My sisters! They're here? She pulled it from her bag and opened it. Where are they? Tell me, you foolish box! Hey, I told you they're not here anymore. Sarah went through this test first, and Mary finished hers a week ago. They both passed. Out of the 3 of you, I can tell you that Mary did the best with her trial, but Sarah faced tougher challenges. Mary never had to start her journey over. Sarah only did once. Right now, you're on even ground with her. If you want to go back to your sisters, you have to earn your way there. Tell me how. I will not be apart from them, Winifred was practically screaming. Okay, fine. You know that forest you passed out in. On the other side is a city with a Pokemon gym. You defeat the gym leader, you get a badge. You do that 8 times in 8 different towns, and then fight the final 4 trainers in the Pokemon League tournament. You can go back after that. But there's more to it. She shoved the Pokedex in her bag before it can finish. Well, Ariel, looks like you will be helping me get home to my sisters on this journey. She spoke to her Horsey in its Pokeball. Let's extend our coven, shall we? And she did so. On Route 1, she caught Frosty the Snow Runt. Route 22, she got some redemption and caught a Meganium that she named Emerald. Route 2 saw the addition of Goldeen that she named Billy, a cold fish for a cold heart. And in Viridian Forest, she lost her encounter of a Gulpin when Ariel accidentally killed it with a critical hit bubble. Honestly, Winifred wasn't as upset this time. Before traveling through the forest, Winifred took some time to train her Pokemon up so they'd be more powerful. Her first battle saw them narrowly escape death, but they managed to pull off a win. Winifred and her Pokemon fought their way through the forest and made it out. They walked into Pewter City and healed up at the Pokemon Center. Winifred needed a rest too after all of that nonsense. She found the gym and saw the minimum level of power that challengers needed to be at before taking on the gym. With a huff, Winifred took her Pokemon just outside of Pewter City to the tail end of Route 2 to train. While they were training, a small humanoid penguin with blonde hair appeared and her Pokedex went off in her bag. Specially selected for Winifred Sanderson. You may catch this Pokemon and use it legally. Specially selected, she asked it upon pulling it from her bag. We match personalities to Pokemon. This is one of 6 we have picked for you, it explained. Now catch it. It was not an easy catch, but after a few Pokeballs were tossed, Smoochum has been registered to your Pokedex. You're going to have a time with this one. It evolves into something more powerful when it has a high bond of friendship with its trainer. Friendship allows thee to grow. She opened her Pokeball and looked at Smoochum, who smiled at her. It held its arms up, indicating it wanted to be picked up. Why don't we start with a name? Oh, Hey, her Pokédex chimed in. This is actually the offspring of a Pokemon Sarah had to sacrifice that she named Susan. Smoochum clapped. How about we name thee after thy mother? Susie should fit, I think, Winifred said, and Smoochum danced. Time to train you as well, Susie. After hours of training, Winifred and her Pokemon rested up at the Pokemon Center. Susie, once Winifred fell asleep, burst from her Pokeball and crawled into the bed. She squeezed herself between Winifred's arms and went to sleep with her. When Winifred woke up the next morning and found Susie there, she started to get annoyed, but saw how cute she looked asleep and let it slide. Together with her 5 Pokemon, they went to the gym. The sign had the Pokemon type scratched out. Winifred entered and met with the first gym trainer. Look, kid, you're not skilled enough to take on Brock, he said, and sent in a Swalot. Attack, Ariel, Winifred commanded. Bubble! Bubble barely made a dent, so Winifred decided to call her back and send in Emerald. Emerald set up Reflect to boost their side's defenses, but the sludge attack slammed into him at critical power. Emerald barely survived, but he also became poisoned. Winifred gulped and her Pokédex beeped. Type matchups are important. Poison is strong against grass, it said. Why didst thou not tell me sooner? She asked it. You didn't ask, it replied, then went silent. Emerald, return, she called him back. Go, Frosty! Frosty took a sludge and became poisoned too. Winifred had him attack, but it hardly did a thing. This thing was a defensive wall. Winifred knew switching out would cost her a turn, and she was out of potions for healing. But was training her Pokemon properly part of this trial? She hated doing it, but she had to keep Frosty in battle. She didn't want to lose another Pokemon so early. She couldn't look weak in front of her sisters when she eventually would get back. But she had no other choice. Frosty pulled off a few more powder snow attacks, freezing their foe before he succumbed to the poison. Winifred returned his body to his ball and whispered, Your sacrifice will not be in vain. She sent out Ariel, who finished off the Swalot. In came a Carvanha. Keep at it, Ariel. Ariel used Smokescreen, but a critical hit bite from the fish ended her short life as Winifred's partner. Winifred was sorry to see her go, but she'd hardly built a bond with her horsey. She sent in Billy the Goldeen, who pecked the Carvanha into submission. Winifred went back to the Pokemon Center and asked her Pokédex how to use the thing people referred to as a PC. Once she learned, she took a moment to say farewell to Frosty and Ariel. She couldn't quit yet, so she returned to the gym with her remaining 3 Pokemon. She approached the young man at the head of the gym. Greetings, Challenger. I'm Brock, the Pewter City Gym Leader, he introduced himself. I am Winifred Sanderson, and I've come for thy badge, she said proudly. All right, we'll see if you get it. I'm going to battle you with 2 Pokemon I'm putting through some healing therapy. You'll be a good test to see if they're ready to go back into the wild, Brock said. Do your worst, Winifred challenged him. Go, Ho-Oh! Brock sent out an enormous phoenix-like bird. Winifred's Pokédex went off loudly. Ho-Oh, a legendary Pokemon, a fire and flying type. These Pokemon are exceptionally rare and hard to defeat. We shall see. Winifred sent out Susie, and Ho-Oh used Safeguard to prevent status effects. Lick! Susie only made the legendary bird lose about 4 health points. Ho-Oh used Whirlwind, which forces Pokemon to switch out. Susie was replaced with Billy, who pulled off Peck before being switched with Susie. Susie went into Emerald, and each of the 3 took turns making the tiniest of dents in the legendary bird. Finally, Emerald struck the final blow. Brock sent in his own Goldeen, and Emerald took it down with just 1 Razor Leaf. Winifred let out a clap for her efforts against their foe, and the 3 Pokemon rushed her. She yelped as Susie jumped at her, and Winifred managed to catch her. Susie smooched her trainer's cheek and grinned. Emerald wrapped his long neck around Winifred's shoulders, and Billy flopped on the ground by her feet happily. Winifred looked at the 3 of them and smiled. Good work, she said, then returned them to their balls. Brock walked over and clapped. You defeated Ho-Oh with Pokemon that shouldn't have been able to. Good job. You've earned the Boulder Badge. Brock handed over her first badge and Winifred pinned it to her cloak. The next gym's in Cerulean City. You'll have to go across Route 3 and through Mount Moon to get there. I hear there's been some suspicious activity in Mount Moon, so stay vigilant. I'll make my way there immediately, Winifred said, but Brock cleared his throat. I'd let your Pokemon rest up first. They had a long fight and need some rest. Go to the Pokemon Center and leave in the morning. Winifred didn't like being told what to do, but her Pokemon did need to be healed, so she conceded. She stayed at the Pokemon Center overnight, but this time she was aware of when Susie opened her ball and crawled into bed. She decided it wasn't the worst feeling and fell asleep with her smoochum. And now. Previously on episode 2. Winifred left Pewter City with what remained of her Pokemon. Along Route 3 there were many trainers, and they challenged Winifred to a battle every chance they had. It delighted Winnie to beat each child, teenager, and young adult that crossed her path. Emerald was showing his prowess as leader of the pack, with Susie keeping up with him fairly well. Billy wasn't as strong, and for a Water-type Pokemon, he didn't even know a Water-type move. This frustrated Winifred slightly, but she needed every creature she could get so far, which brought her to her next encounter. Winnie saw a black shadow and began to creep up behind it, but a pink heart-shaped fish leaped from the pond nearby and smacked her in the face. Winifred heard her Pokédex start laughing in her bag. Love Disc, a Water-type Pokemon. This Pokemon does not evolve to get stronger and has relatively low stats. This is your encounter, it beeped. Trash, Winifred grumbled, but she caught it anyway. She journeyed up to the Pokemon Center outside of a cave and healed her team, trash included. As she was taking a rest, checking the map on her Pokédex, a man walked up to her. Hey kid, I got a Pokemon for you, he said slyly. I am not a child, Winifred growled, looking up from her map. All right, you're a teenager, but who cares? I've got a rare Pokemon for you here, just $500. Sir, if I buy this Pokemon from thee, wilt thou bugger off? Winifred asked. I'll be gone before I finish counting the money, he promised. Winifred took out 500 of her winnings from her battles and handed it to him. He handed her a Pokeball. Pleasure doing business with a smart young lady like yourself. No returns! He took off running as Winifred opened the ball. Out popped a teeny blue mouse bouncing on its tail. Her Pokédex kicked up again with a laugh. The hits just keep on coming for you, Winnie. This is a Zuril, a normal type. It evolves with high friendship. You haven't even gotten Smoochum to evolve. Good luck on 2 Pokemon relationships. It guffawed. All right, Jerry, you've been freed from that delusional man's clutches, Winifred said, returning her new Pokemon to his ball. Why do people insist upon calling me a child? Simple. That's how you look to other people. It's kind of a disguise, so you're taken more seriously around here as a trainer. They're the lucky ones since you were a cute kid. I've got to see the real you, the Pokédex informed her. Winifred slammed its lid shut and stuffed it in her bag. I'd best be off to Mount Moon, she said. Winifred started into Mount Moon, the cave next to the center, and she looked around to see more trainers ahead of her. As she walked in a bit further, a pink dog charged at her with a hard headbutt. Winifred sent in Billy to help her weaken the dog, and she threw a ball. Click! Snubbull has been registered to your Pokédex, it beeped. Thy growls remind me of my sister, Winifred said, looking at the ball. I shall call thee Mary. Mary was a strong new asset to the team. Winifred took time to train her along with Jerry, so they caught up with the others. She didn't even bother training Trash. Now they were ready for the trainers in Mount Moon. Mary quickly proved herself as a heavy hitter in battle. Everyone was working hard, and Winifred started to look at her Pokemon as more than just magical creatures. They had potential. As she explored the large caverns and picked up items frightened trainers dropped, she happened upon a man in black cornering a Pokemon. She kept walking, but her footsteps caught the man's attention. He saw her and yelled. Hey! You poking your head into Team Rocket's business? He accused her. I've not the faintest idea of which you speak, Winifred said haughtily. Don't lie to me, kid. I know you're down here to spy on us to tell the authorities. You're messing with the wrong person. Team Rocket's full of dangerous gangsters who capture and sell Pokemon at a high price. Don't think you're getting out of here alive. The Rocket Grunt pulled a Pokeball from his belt. Swampert! Seems I'll need to teach thee a lesson. One should never attack a Sanderson, Winifred huffed. Emerald! Razor Leaf! Her Meganium burst from his ball and unleashed a powerful Razor Leaf that knocked out the Swampert immediately. Emerald stomped his feet, ready for the next challenge. The Grunt tossed in his Rhydon, which Emerald also took out with Razor Leaf. He let out a prideful cry as the Grunt sent in Poochyena, which fell to the Grass-type's attacks. Winifred laughed wickedly as the Team Rocket Grunt ran away in terror. "One more Razor Leaf," Winifred told Emerald. "Hit him." And Emerald did just that. This was only the first of several encounters with Team Rocket inside the cavernous mountain. Winifred had a lot of fun putting the so-called gangsters in their place with her Pokemon. Every time she happened upon them, they were talking about fossils that could be revived into rare Pokemon. Maybe she needed to get one of these as well. Winnie just happened to stumble upon 2 fossils towards the exit, but a lanky man wearing glasses claimed they were his. Winifred's team kicked him to the curb, and she took 1 fossil, but the guy made off with the other one. Upon exiting Mount Moon, it was nighttime on Route 4. Winifred knew there was no real shelter around for miles, so she made camp by a pond. Billy and Trash were sent into the water for a rest, while Mary, Jerry, Emerald, and Susie camped on land in a small heap together. Winifred slept against a log by the fire alone, until she felt a small body squeeze between her arms. Susie just couldn't let her sleep alone. The next morning, they walked down Route 4 into the grass where Winifred found a small, fluffy brown cat with big ears. She sent in Trash to weaken the Pokemon, and she did until the foe killed her. No big loss. Jerry came in and used Bubble to weaken it a bit more, and after several Pokeballs were tossed, click! Eevee has been registered to your Pokedex. This Pokemon has great potential as it can evolve into 8 different Pokemon, but in this version of the Kanto region, only 5 are available. Mary had a Flareon called Hot Tamale that evolves from Eevee. She did not end up using him. However, your sister Sarah raised an Eevee named Carlos from birth, and it became her ace partner. In her Kanto experience, her Eevee evolved into a Glaceon. You cannot obtain that evolution here. "If Sarah can raise such a powerful creature, so can I," Winifred said confidently, opening her Eevee's Pokeball. "Thou lookest like the cat that used to prowl about the cobbler's workshop. I'll name thee Cobbler." Cobbler pranced in place happily as he was bestowed a name. He went back into his ball, and Winifred walked the rest of the way into Cerulean City. She healed her Pokemon at the center and explored the town for a bit. She found the gym, but was told the gym leader was away for the day. Winifred decided to check out the nearby routes for more Pokemon, but before she could leave the town... "Hey, Winifred!" It was the grating voice of Jeffrey. "You're still trudging along behind me back here? Sheesh, I've already caught double the Pokemon you have and earned 2 gym badges. You're gonna need to train more if you plan to keep up with me. I had more experience in that blasted mountain than thee," she snapped at him. "Why don't you put your Pokemon where your buck-toothed mouth is?" Jeffrey challenged her to a battle. "I'll show thee who is the superior trainer," Winifred exclaimed. Jeffrey sent in a Heracross, which Winifred countered with Billy. The Heracross was much stronger in strength than Billy, almost knocking him out with 2 hits, but Billy used Peck and knocked it down to half health. Winnie needed to keep her Pokemon alive, so she withdrew her Goldeen and sent out Emerald. It took a few tackle attacks, but the Heracross went down. Next came a Walrein that was also strong. Winifred had Emerald use Razor Leaf twice, which ended up knocking it out. As a Kangaskhan came in, Winifred was feeling the pressure, but Emerald stomped his feet aggressively. Winifred allowed him to continue battling and called for him to use consecutive Razor Leaf attacks. He took a few Comet punches, but he finished it off. The Ditto appeared and transformed into Emerald. She withdrew him and sent in Susie since Grass was weak to ice. The tackle attack that smacked her knocked her down to half health, so Winifred withdrew her in frustration. Emerald came back in and eventually knocked out the Ditto. "Your Meganium might be hot stuff, but the rest of your pitiful Pokemon need work," Jeffrey huffed. "A team of Pokemon is only as strong as the members in it. Remember that." He walked off, and Winifred headed for the bridge. His words echoed in her mind. She faced several trainers as she crossed the bridge, including one Team Rocket member that asked if she wanted to join them. Winifred declined by kicking his butt in battle. Over on the next route, Winifred caught a Psyduck named DuckTales. On Route 25, she caught a strong Nidoqueen named Narcissa. Winifred heard tell of a man named Bill with a bunch of rare Pokemon nearby, so she decided to go pay him a visit. And now... Previously on Episode 3. Keep going, Cobbler. Do not shrink in the face of such an unworthy foe as that, Winifred encouraged her Eevee, who was fighting a Swampert, a Pokemon 5 times his size and twice as bulky. Cobbler did not flinch as he used Tail Whip to lower its defenses. Marvelous! The bite attack has passed. Now tackle it! Cobbler launched himself at the Swampert, and the behemoth amphibian went down, Cobbler fluffing his fur with pride. Good work, Cobbler! Her Eevee pranced to her side and smiled at the fallen foe. Winifred's team was really starting to learn from her, both in battle and in personality. Cobbler was beginning to instill a sense of pride in himself because Winifred didn't always hand out compliments. They were special. So if he got one, he knew he was special too. Mary the Snubbull relished in every bit of love she got from her trainer, and did not hesitate to hit her foes as hard as she could. Sometimes she'd critical hit them just for fun. Winifred approved of this method. Jerry was unfortunately still very timid, as his attacks weren't developing fast enough for Winifred's liking, but she did offer him encouragement every now and then. As for Billy, he knew he wasn't going to meet his trainer's standards until he learned a water-type move, and he was trying hard, but failing at every power-up level. Now Emerald, like Winifred herself, took his job as the strongest member of the team very seriously. If he wanted to stay in battle to prevent the others from possibly being hurt, he'd stomp his feet and stare at Winifred hard, who was often inclined to agree with him. Susie was Winifred's doppelganger. She was sassy, she was outspoken, she was loud for her small stature, and she knew how to pack a wallop when it counted. In fact, she was the second strongest member of the team. Winifred was beginning to take note of her Pokemon's personalities as they traveled along Route 25 and fought every trainer they ran into. Now, the whole purpose of this trip was to find that man Bill's house and see if he had any rare Pokemon he'd be willing to part with. She'd heard all about his collection from people in Cerulean City, and maybe under the right persuasion, she'd be lucky enough to take one for herself. As she found the house and went inside, this proved to not be the case. On the floor was a pink Pokemon called Clefairy that Winifred had fought a couple of times, but there was no sign of Bill. He seems to be absent today. Perhaps he won't mind if I take this Clefairy with me. She readied a Pokeball when suddenly, "Do not throw that at me, please!" the Clefairy yelled, and Winifred screeched in surprise. "I'm not a Pokemon. My name's Bill. I'm the owner of this house." "A Pokemon is the collector of rare Pokemon I have heard tell of." Winifred examined him skeptically. No, I'm not actually a Pokemon. I was working on an experiment with that big machine over there, and my Clefairy walked into one end, and I walked into the other end, and we accidentally got put together. Please help me out and turn me back to my regular size," he pleaded. "I'm afraid I haven't the spell to help thee. My spellbook no longer answers to me," Winifred said, trying to hide her dismay. "What? There's no magic involved here. Just press that red button over there when I tell you to," he pointed up at the table. "Oh, very well," Winifred said, thinking this could be used as a bargaining chip to gain one of his rare Pokemon. She walked over to the table, waited for Bill to get back in the machine, then pressed the button. He walked out a moment later as a man, and the Clefairy came out the other side. "Now that I've helped you, perhaps a reward is in order," she said slyly. "Indeed it is," Bill agreed and handed her a ticket. "This is for a party on the ship, the SS Anne in Vermilion. So, go have a great time." Winifred was less than impressed. "I was hoping for a Pokemon," she said. "I would, but all mine are on loan to a professor overseas right now. All but Clefairy, and it was my first, so I'm not letting it go," he replied. Well, maybe that ship would have something worthwhile for Winifred. The sun was setting, so she returned to Cerulean City for some rest. At this point, she stopped fighting Susie's affections and allowed her to sleep in the bed. Since friendship was necessary to evolve her smoochum, maybe this would help. The next morning, Winifred heard people saying the gym leader was back, so she ran right over. The sign by the door read, "Cerulean Gym, Gym Leader, Misty." The typing was scratched out. Winifred ventured inside and fought against 2 gym trainers before approaching a young red-headed woman at the gym leader's post. "Hey, a fellow redhead! I like you already," Misty giggled. "I'm Misty, the gym leader here. And I am Winifred Sanderson. I've come for thy badge," she introduced herself. I like your spunk, kid. Let's see if you got what it takes. Hope you don't mind me trying out some new Pokemon on you, Misty said and tossed her first ball. Fearow! Cobbler, sand attack! Winifred sent in her Eevee to face the giant bird. Cobbler tossed some sand in the Fearow's eyes to lower its accuracy, but the bird's ability Keen Eye protected it from accuracy loss. Fearow, in return, used Growl to lower Cobbler's attack strength. Winifred decided to withdraw Cobbler and send in Mary, who barked at her opponent. Her Intimidate ability lowered Fearow's attack, making its hits hurt much less. Mary tackled it and took out a sizable chunk of its health, so Fearow used Leer to lower her defenses, but Mary tackled it again and almost took it out. Misty decided to heal her bird, but Mary came in for another tackle attack and took out a fourth of health. Fearow, using Growl to lower Mary's attack, did not sit well with the small pink dog. Mary used Tackle and knocked out the Fearow with a critical hit. She howled victoriously and Winifred clapped for her. Misty's final Pokemon was a Cleffa that put Mary to sleep. Winifred yelled several times for Mary to awaken, but the sleep was not letting up. Now during this time, Mary was taking plenty of damage. When Mary woke up and used Tackle, Winifred knew her next turn needed to be used to heal, so she did so. Cleffa tried to put Mary back to sleep, but Mary dodged that attack and took out the Cleffa. Mary had soloed the second gym. She ran back to Winifred and jumped for her, then was surprised when she was caught and hugged. "Good work, Mary, I'm proud of thee," Winifred smiled, and Snubbull looked like she was going to cry. She buried her face in Winifred's arms and sniffled as her trainer stroked her back. Misty walked over to her and smiled. "I knew you'd put up a good fight. That Snubbull's really strong. Keep raising her right. Looks like she'd follow you into battle any time." This statement made Winifred think of her real Mary waiting back in purgatory for her. She also followed Winifred into battle without so much as a thought. She needed to thank her properly, too. Misty held up a badge. "You've earned the Cascade badge." Winifred took it and pinned it to her cloak. 2 down, 6 to go. As she walked out of the gym, a commotion rang out nearby. Ever curious, Winifred walked over to see what the shouting was about. A man was speaking to a police officer about a TM being stolen. Winifred caught sight of a man in black with a red R on his chest slipping by, and she knew exactly who stole whatever the heck a TM was. Riding her high from winning her second badge, Winifred decided to battle the Team Rocket Grunt and came up against a Scizor, a steel and bug type. Mary put up a valiant effort against the foe, but eventually she had to swap out into Emerald to save her precious dog. Emerald finished him off, but the Grunt sent in a legendary Pokemon called Latias. Emerald stomped his feet and Winifred had him use Razor Leaf, which was at critical power, but this thing was bulky. Latias used Wish, which seemed to do nothing at first, but as Emerald hit the dragon again, it healed itself from the Wish. Winifred had to withdraw Emerald, and she sent in Susie to use Powder Snow. Susie did it a couple times, and finished off the legendary Pokemon. She stood, flippers on her hips, and pridefully smiled at the Rocket Grunt, who ran away in fear of this little penguin, leaving the TM behind. Winifred defeated his team, but she knew she needed to find something to fight against those types of steel and bug Pokemon. She needed a fire type. She went to return the TM, but was told to keep it out of thanks for apprehending the criminal. Now her search for a fire-type Pokemon began on Route 5, where she ran into a Kingler, another water type. The large crab refused to be caught, so Winifred had Cobbler continuously weaken it. Winifred became too transfixed on throwing Pokeballs that she didn't see the attack coming. Vice Grip pinched the life right out of Cobbler, his eyes locked with Winnie's in terror before he was dropped on the ground, dead. Winifred actually felt her heart stop and her gut tie into a knot. Not her Eevee! She sent in Emerald to fight now and allowed him to deal the finishing blow. The crab was not worth the price she had just paid. That Razor Leaf felt good as Winifred cradled her dead Eevee. That's when she heard her Pokedex beep. "Pay more attention next time and this will not happen again, or at least not as often," it said. "Quiet!" Winifred yelled at it. For some reason, Cobbler's loss made her think of Sarah and Mary's vanishing. She'd caused that, too. "Be nice to me, and I'll tell you there's a way to bring him back that Sarah discovered on her journey," it taunted her. Winifred reached into her bag and pulled out the dex. "What dost thou mean?" she asked it. Sarah found a way to reverse the deaths of 4 of her Pokemon. There were only supposed to be 3 revivals, but her Pokedex was merciful, and she got a 4th. You have to have a certain item in your bag to make it work. You'll find a new kit has also magically appeared in your endless bag. That's all I'm telling you. Figure it out. It went silent, and Winifred started rummaging in her bag with one hand while cradling Cobbler with the other. There was a potion brewing kit with a small cauldron, spoon, and supplies to build a fire. So a potion was needed to restore life to her Eevee. Winifred continued rummaging in her bag to see if there was anything else to help, and that's when her fingers brushed the revive she'd picked up in Mount Moon. She knew this would not work on her Pokemon, as had been stated to her obnoxiously by the Pokedex. Winifred's emotions overcame her, and she crushed the item in her hand. In doing so, it revealed potion ingredients for the life potion. Winifred gasped and started brewing. She knew she'd have to sacrifice the life of another, but it would be worth it. Once the potion was brewed, she bottled the small dose in a vial and went to the PC in Cerulean City's Pokemon Center. She let Mary go to the meadow for a break and withdrew DuckTales. Normally this would be no issue for Winifred, but she almost felt guilty for what she planned to do to this Psyduck. However, after spending 5 minutes with it, she no longer felt guilty and fed it the potion. That duck was annoying. Winifred breathed in the life force, but held her Eevee in front of the stream. DuckTales looked at Winifred, who sighed as the guilt returned. "Thy sacrifice will not be in vain. I thank thee for giving your life for Cobbler," she said remorsefully. DuckTales touched Winifred's knee kindly and nodded before passing away. It was as if it had understood, and it knew it likely wouldn't be much of other services. So she put the water-type's body back in its ball and sat in the grass with Cobbler in her lap. Her Pokemon watched nervously. Finally, Cobbler coughed. Winifred felt a wave of relief wash over her as Cobbler looked up and licked her chin. "I am sorry I let that happen to thee," she apologized. "I was blind to the attack of your foe. I will do better as thy trainer," she promised, then looked at her whole team. "Let this moment be a lesson for all of us. Let DuckTales' sacrifice not be in vain and be the only life we lose from here on. We have lost others before her, but it stops with that Psyduck." Her team nodded, and they set off for Vermilion City through the underground path. It was on Route 6 that Winifred caught yet another water type in Shelter that she named Sheldon. They made it to Vermilion City at nightfall. Winifred ran into a man who gifted her a fishing rod as a welcome gift. This provided the opportunity for a new Pokemon, and Winifred wasted no time. She found the wharf, and as she started to flick her line into the water, she heard splashing and loud cries coming from the water. Winifred squinted and saw a small fox drowning in the waves. Winifred couldn't swim, but Billy could. She sent her Goldeen into the water as she cast the line to the fox. It made it about the same time as Billy. He tied the line around the fox, then floated underneath it to help guide it back to shore. Through a team effort, Winifred and Billy pulled the fox into her arms. Winifred picked it up and saw that it was a bright red color. She held it up to look it in the eyes. "Art thou all right?" she asked it, then was suddenly met by a stream of flames. It didn't actually hurt, as this was a very weak attack. As the flames stopped, Winifred coughed on the smoke and soot, and the fox was completely dry. "I just saved thy life, and thou repayest me with a flame attack!" Vulpix, a fire-type Pokemon. You might want to catch this, since this is now your encounter, the Pokedex said. "Dost thou feel like traveling with me?" Winifred asked the Vulpix. It let out a happy cry and snuggled up to her now sooty face. "I'll take that as a yes." Winifred touched an empty Pokeball to the nose of the fox and click! Vulpix has been registered to your Pokedex. Quite a spitfire from the looks of it. She'll fit in with you just fine. "Oh, do shut up," Winifred huffed. Jerry was sent to the meadow for now, and Pixie was added to the team. She was very weak, but Winifred planned to train her the next day. Oh, Pixie caught up with her friends fast, as she was welcomed with open arms. As they trained on the route over from Vermilion City, Winifred caught a Hoppip named Fresca. In Diglett's cave, they ran into a Pokemon called Jigglypuff. Its signature move was Sing, that lulled Pokemon to sleep. It was a female, and between the big blue eyes and the hypnotic singing, Winifred decided to name her new Jigglypuff Sarah. It was then that Winifred realized how much she missed her sisters. She had to go home. She had to get back to them. So Winifred trained her Pokemon for Vermilion's gym, and while she was training, she ran into a sparkling, oddly colored Whiscash. She'd battled plenty of these, but never one like this. As soon as she started to attack, her Pokedex went off like a siren. "What are you doing? That's a shiny Pokemon. It's super rare. Catch it, you fool!" So, that's how Winifred caught Eliza the shiny Whiscash. Yet another water type. Her team finished training, but the gym leader was away. So Winifred approached the SSN for that party Bill gave her a ticket for. And now, previously on episode 4. Winifred boarded the SSN and found her stateroom where there was a healing device for her Pokemon. She gave them a quick rest before exploring the ship, engaging in many battles with other trainers, and looting their cabins when they weren't looking. During her first battle on the ship, Mary fought hard and evolved into Granbull. Her Pokemon were doing very well, and about that time, they ran into Jeffrey. "Oh, bats and beetles, not you again," Winifred grumbled. "Well, hello to you too, Winifred," Jeffrey smirked. "Hard to believe they invited you of all people to this party." "Funny. I was thinking the same thing about thee," she retorted. "I've caught 40 Pokemon so far and earned 3 gym badges, while you have less than 20 and only have 2 badges. I'm the better trainer, Winifred," he bragged. "Then how is it thou hast never won against me?" she asked him with a sneer, and he snarled. "If you're so good, prove it," Jeffrey challenged her. "I'll take you on right here." "With pleasure," Winifred said. Jeffrey sent in Mr. Mime, which Winifred countered with Cobbler. Cobbler opened with Quick Attack as Mr. Mime used a stat-boosting move. Cobbler took it as a challenge and used Quick Attack again at critical power, knocking out his foe. His next Pokemon was a Steel type called Mawile. Winifred called Cobbler back and sent in Pixie to fight the big-jawed enemy. Mawile tried to lower Pixie's evasiveness, but Pixie's Ember took down the Pokemon in one hit. Next came a Ninjask who took the Ember and retaliated with Fury Swipes. Winifred's Vulpix endured the hit and blew another flame at the bug, knocking it out. Pixie howled with pride and grinned at Winifred, who smiled back but commanded her to pay attention. Jeffrey sent in his Ditto, which transformed into a Vulpix just like Pixie. It was Vulpix versus false Vulpix, and Winifred was determined to prove her Fiery Fox was superior to the cheap copy. Pixie fought through the Confuse Ray attack and took down the Ditto with a bunch of quick attacks, winning the battle. Pixie hopped in place, then bounded over to Winifred and jumped in her arms. Winifred rocked her like she used to rock Book, and Pixie licked her face. "Well done, Pixie. You practically defeated him all by thyself," she complimented her, and Pixie gave her a gentle headbutt. The affection from her Vulpix felt good. Jeffrey huffed. "You got lucky," he said, "but next time you'll lose to me." "When pigs fly," Winifred laughed as he walked past her. She heard the sound of retching up the stairs and felt the boat lurch. Something told her the two might be connected. Winifred walked up the stairs and saw the captain bent out the porthole. She smelled a rancid odor coming from his desk and saw a plate of food that had clearly seen better days. The boat lurched again, so she thought quickly. Winifred cast a healing spell on the captain so he could keep the ship from crashing. As a thank you, she received the HM for the move Cut. He showed her how to use the device to teach the move to her Meganium. The ship docked safely back in Vermilion City, and Winifred went to the gym. The first thing she did was knock out the gym trainers so she could solve the gym's puzzle. She didn't get the puzzle straight away, but she caught on to the trick after her second attempt. She unlocked the electric barriers and approached a giant of a man sitting in the gym leader's chair. "Name's Lieutenant Surge. It's not every day someone clears my puzzle so quickly. You must have an electric personality," he commented. "Thou hast no idea," Winifred chuckled. "If you're good at strategizing, you'll be a good challenge for my Pokemon. I'm raising some new partners and I want to try them out. Be warned, they've had military training," Surge stated, getting up from his seat. "My team will show yours just what they can do," she said, and the battle began. Lieutenant Surge sent in a Corphish, and Winifred chose Mary to fight. Mary's tackle attack knocked it down to a fourth of health. Corphish used Harden to raise its defenses, but it was for naught. Mary tackled it again and knocked it out. His next Corphish was faster than the previous one and raised its defenses while dodging Mary's tackle. She came at it on the next turn and lowered it to just below half health. It used Harden again and squandered its last last turn, Mary knocked it out and faced down the Yanma that was sent in. Before she could move, Yanma used hypnosis and put her to sleep. Winifred cursed under her breath and withdrew Mary in favor of Pixie. Yanma used Sonic Boom, which does a set 20 damage each time it is used. Winifred knew Pixie could take 2 at a time due to her health level. Yanma used Double Team to boost its evasion, but Pixie landed an Ember which almost knocked it out. Yanma's speed boost ability made it faster every turn, so it went to attack with Hypnosis, but Pixie dodged the attack and knocked it out with Ember. Mary, who'd woken up, and Pixie danced around Winifred in a manner that reminded her of her sisters. Winifred smiled at them as Surge walked over to her. "My new guys have some more work to do before they can measure up to a team like yours," he complimented her. "You have earned the Thunder Badge." Winifred took it from him and pinned it to her cloak. "Whatever strategy you are using to train those Pokemon, keep it up. You'll be a champ in no time." "Thank thee," Winifred said, and departed from the gym. She wasn't exactly sure how she was raising her Pokemon, but they were listening to her when she called to them. On her way out of Vermilion, she was stopped by Professor Oak's aide and given the HM flash to help light up dark caves. According to her map, she was headed for one to get to her next destination. To get there, she had to travel back up to Cerulean City and go to Route 9 from there. Once she got up to Route 9, she knew she could get a new Pokemon, so she went into the grass and explored. She bumped into a large rock statue, and it started moving. Her Pokedex went off. "Regirock, a legendary Pokemon. This is a dangerous one to tame," it said. "I'm far more dangerous than this pile of rubble," Winifred jeered. "Go, Billy! Water Pulse!" Regirock used Rock Throw and barely made a dent in the Goldeen. Billy's Water Pulse packed a wallop and weakened it below half health. As Winifred prepared to have Billy use Water Pulse again, the Regirock glowed bright orange and kaboom! Winifred was knocked off of her feet and down into the grass. When the smoke cleared, the Regirock was gone, and Billy was belly up on the ground. He wasn't moving. Winifred shook herself out of her stupor and crawled over to him. She gave him a nudge, but he didn't respond. She gave him a small zap with her lightning magic, but the Goldeen was not moving. She picked her Pokemon up in her arms, hung her head, and tried not to cry, then proceeded to sob for a moment. Explosion, Regirock's most powerful move. Unless a Pokemon has very high defensive stats, it is better to retreat, her Pokedex said. "Thou didst not think to tell me sooner," Winifred snapped. "You seemed confident in your abilities," it responded. "Overconfident, it seems." Winifred hugged her fallen fish. "I am sorry, Billy. I named thee after the man that I loved while he was a cold fish. Thy heart was warm, and I cared for thee. I will never forget you." She withdrew him into his ball, returned to Cerulean, and buried him in the PC. She took a moment to gather her wits before adding Eliza, her shiny Whiscash, to the team. She continued her hike and took out her anger on the challenging trainers along the way. On Route 10, she caught a Swampert that she named Axel, another water type. She made it to Rock Tunnel at nightfall and rested at the Pokemon Center nearby. Susie climbed into bed with Winifred, but this time she'd brought Cobbler and Pixie with her. Susie squeezed between Winifred's arms, Cobbler snuggled up by her head, and Pixie snuggled up to her chest. They knew she was upset about Billy. Normally, Winifred would fight the affection, but this time she just leaned into it. The next day, she spent time training Eliza, who was proving to be quite formidable. Confident in her new Pokemon, she walked into Rock Tunnel and had Susie use Flash. She caught a Magneton inside that she named Magneto, and now... Previously on Episode 5, Winifred and her team explored the cavernous rock tunnel and they battled many trainers. Eliza was proving to be a very valuable member of the team, and suddenly, Winifred didn't miss Billy as much as she did before. Eliza was making sure her trainer knew just how amazing she was. At one interval on their way through the cave, Winifred picked up another Revive to use as a life potion later. Only she didn't realize how soon she was going to need it. Emerald faced off against another trainer's Registeel, which Winnie knew could blow itself up. After all, that's how Billy died. "Take no chances, Emerald. Use Reflect and boost thy defenses," Winifred ordered, and Emerald did so. Registeel used Explosion, but it came off at critical power. Emerald braced himself, and when the dust cleared, he lay dead on the ground. Winifred screamed for her Meganium and cradled his head as a Caterpie was sent in. Eliza burst from her ball and avenged Emerald. As soon as Winifred could reach a Pokemon Center, she was going to bring Emerald back, no matter what she had to do. Eventually, Winifred fought her way out of Rock Tunnel and walked into Lavender Town. As soon as she walked into the town, she felt magic in the air. Winifred knew this was the perfect place to recharge her powers and resurrect her Meganium. Without so much as a thought, Winifred removed Sheldon from her PC's meadow area and journeyed to a secluded spot. She brewed her life potion with the ingredients found inside her revive item. She opened the Pokeball containing her Shelder, fed him the potion, apologized, and drained his life force into Emerald. Sheldon's eyes looked sad and betrayed as he passed from this plane. The smallest pang of guilt tugged at Winifred's stomach, but she knew she had plenty of Water-type Pokemon, so Sheldon was no great loss to her. The guilt went away as soon as Emerald opened his eyes and looked at her. She stroked his chin and smiled at him softly. "I will not lose thee to such circumstances. Thou art too important," Winifred told him. Emerald nuzzled her cheek. After taking a much-needed rest, Winifred and her Pokemon headed to Route 8, where they caught a Magby named Pyro. On Route 7, Winifred caught yet another water type in Wooper that she named Brenda. She walked over to Celadon City, and Winifred explored the town. Going up a back flight of stairs, she came to a schoolroom where a man was holding class. Winifred decided to stay and learn a little bit more about these creatures called Pokemon. She was the last to leave, but before she left, the teacher caught her. "Hey, you stayed till the end of my lecture. I was wondering if you could help me out," he asked. "With what?" She raised a brow. He pulled out a Pokeball. "I found this Pokeball abandoned a while back. This Pokemon seems like it was really strong at some point, but it lost a lot of its power. I haven't been able to find its trainer, just a tag on the ball with the name of the Pokemon. Think you could take it and train it up until we find the owner?" he requested. "A free Pokemon? I'd be happy to," Winifred said and took the ball. The tag on it read, "Nutcase the Executor." She opened the ball and a giant palm tree with 3 heads looked around like they were searching for someone. They were surprised and disappointed to see Winifred. Her Pokedex beeped. "Winifred, you just received a very special Pokemon." "I beg your pardon," she asked. "Special in what way?" "This Pokemon is a former member of the Pokemon League champion from the last trial. This Executor, named Nutcase, belongs to your sister, Mary. It was one of the first Pokemon she ever caught here." The Pokedex pulled up a photo of Mary and Nutcase. Nutcase danced excitedly upon seeing her. "Well, my sister trained thee to be a champion!" Winifred looked at her new acquaintance, then grimaced. "I do not particularly enjoy thy present name. I shall change it if it is all right with thee." Nutcase considered it, but since this was Winifred he'd heard so much about, he agreed. "I'd like to name thee Tom. 'Tis more dignified for a champion such as thyself." Nutcase gave a happy dance, and his name changed to Tom. "Now I must put thee in the meadow for now, as I have a powerful grass type, but if I defeat this challenge, perhaps I'll take thee home to Mary." Tom danced very happily at this suggestion and joined his new friends in the meadow. There were significantly less than when he was Mary's partner. Now, Winifred found a pond in town and decided to do some fishing for another new Pokemon. While she was expecting to fish up another water type, she yanked out Eradicate that had been cooling off in the water. So she caught her new friend Bianca and ignored the wisecrack from her Pokedex about their matching teeth. Winifred was getting tired from her long journey through the rock tunnel and trekked to Celadon City, so she took a break at the cafe in town. While enjoying her first good meal that hadn't consisted of berries and Magikarp, someone rushed up to her looking wild-eyed. He was clearly the town drunk and gambler. He laid his coin case down, fled, and proclaimed himself to be free of the curse. Winifred slid it into her bag as she heard someone say he'd been trying to win money for a Pokemon for weeks. She would investigate that later. After her meal, she let her Pokemon out of their balls for some fresh air. The moment Cobbler popped out of his ball, his ears pricked up and he sniffed the air. His tail started wagging at a rapid pace. "What is it, Cobbler?" she asked him, and he took off running. "Cobbler, get back here, you crazy Eevee!" Winifred and her team started chasing after him, with the exception of Eliza, who was put back in her ball. Cobbler was running as if his life depended on it, and he barreled towards the huge shopping complex. Winifred sent Mary ahead to grab Cobbler, but the Eevee was too slick for the Grand Bull. He darted in the doors, and his trainer followed suit. Winifred recalled all of her Pokemon and chased after her Eevee, who was now shooting up the stairs. She finally caught him on the 4th floor at a counter selling rocks. His tail was wagging, and his paws pressed against the glass as he stared at a rock with a thunderbolt on it. Winifred, out of breath, picked him up and glared at him. "Thou must never run away from me. Thy life could have been in danger. I've seen those horrid Team Rocket members crawling all over this city. What was so important that thou hast made me chase thee here?" she scolded him. But Cobbler kept trying to get back to the glass. Winifred looked at the clerk. "Sir, my Eevee is going mad looking at thy rocks. Why is he so fixated on them?" "Oh, he belongs to you?" he stated. "Looks like he's ready to evolve, and he wanted to get your attention." "Then why doesn't he simply evolve?" Winifred asked, and the clerk chuckled. "Training an Eevee, but you haven't a clue about how they work, huh? You see, Eevee evolves into 8 different species of Pokemon. Yes, I know this," Winifred said, "but only 5 can be found in this region." "Right, but to obtain them, you have to establish the right circumstances. While I can tell you and your Eevee are close, it doesn't want to evolve into Espeon or Umbreon. He wants one of the stones here to evolve. The minerals in them react with Eevee's genetics, and he can evolve that way. Why not let me see which one the little guy wants?" The clerk put out a Water Stone, Fire Stone, and a Thunder Stone. Pixie also burst from her ball when the Fire Stone was set down. "Got a Vulpix, too? You'll need a Fire Stone for her to evolve." "Pixie can evolve with a Fire Stone," Winifred repeated. "Yep, but let's get back to your Eevee. He's a little more eager than the Vulpix," the clerk said, watching Cobbler squirming in Winifred's arms. "Set him on the counter, and he'll sniff out the one he wants." Winifred did as she was told and placed Cobbler on the counter. It didn't take long for him to sit down in front of the Thunderstone. The clerk put the other 2 away, and Winifred checked to see if she could pay for it, but her money was depleted. Cobbler looked upset, but Winifred patted him reassuringly. "Hold both the Thunder and Fire Stones for me, sir. I will be back to pick them up later," she requested, and he agreed. Winifred went back to Route 8, where she started battling trainers for winnings. If Cobbler wanted that Thunderstone, he was going to get it. During one battle, Pixie took a lot of damage, but Winifred forgot to heal her. When she sent her in to fight a Doduo in the next battle, Pixie was killed when being withdrawn by the attack Pursuit. Her heart stopped as her Vulpix died while being pulled into her ball. Winifred finished the battle, hiked back to Celadon, bought 1 revive, and brewed a potion. Knowing she still had plenty of water types, she sacrificed Axel without so much as the realization that she had another fire type in the meadow. Axel fell, stunned, as his life force left him. Pixie was restored to life, and Winifred hugged her tightly. "My neglect got thee killed. I promise I will be a better trainer for thee. Please forgive me," she begged, and Pixie licked her cheek. "I will not fail thee again." Winifred returned to the battling for some more money, and during one fight, Susie started to glow. She evolved into a Jinx. Susie hugged Winifred after the battle was over, and Winifred looked her over. She was impressed. Her Pokedex beeped. Jinx, an Ice and Psychic type, specially selected for Winifred Sanderson as a partner. Evolves from Smoochum at level 30, it said, and Winifred looked at it angrily. "You said she evolved with high friendship," she barked. "I lied to you to force you to start bonding with your Pokemon. It worked," it replied. "Normally I'd smash thee into bits, but this time I'll make an exception since this is a blessed moment." After battling more trainers, Winifred returned to the shop and still could not afford the Thunderstone. So she spent the night at the Pokemon Center and slept with Cobbler and Pixie curled up by her feet. Susie was now too big to fit in the bed with her trainers, so she stayed in her Pokeball. The next morning, Winifred walked over to Route 16 and caught a Grovyle, a very powerful grass type like Emerald that she named Buttercup. In the back of her mind, Winifred thought that had she known she was going to get a Grovyle, she may not have revived Emerald. She battled the trainers nearby and earned enough money to pay for the Thunderstone. Cobbler was overjoyed, and Winifred promised Pixie hers once she had regained more of her strength. Cobbler was ready, but as punishment for running off, Winifred said she would let him have it once he reached level 30. Winifred decided it was time to go to the Celadon City gym, where she saw the typing had been scratched out. The first gym trainer allowed Cobbler to reach level 30 in power, and after the battle was over, Winifred pulled out the Thunderstone. She knelt down and placed it in front of her Eevee. Cobbler looked her in the eyes and put his paw on the stone. He glowed brightly, and Winifred saw him grow taller and a little spikier. When the glow faded, her Pokédex beeped. Jolteon, an electric-type Pokemon. "Seems Cobbler wanted to mimic your magic," it said, and Cobbler grinned. "Is that true?" she asked him, and he nodded. "Thank thee. Now I shall use that strange device I have to teach you Shockwave." So the TM for Shockwave was used up, and Cobbler was ready to go. The gym trainers didn't stand a chance now against her Jolteon, and, of course, her other Pokemon. It wasn't long before Winifred approached the sleeping gym leader and woke her up with a jolt from Cobbler. The gym leader hardly seemed fazed. "Oh dear, I must have nodded off again. Are you a challenger?" she asked. "Why else would I be here?" Winifred rolled her eyes. "Okay, well, I'm Erica, the Celadon City gym leader. Normally I'm a grass-type trainer, but I've been training some others I want to use today. Will that be all right with you?" she asked. "You may battle me with whatever creatures you wish, but I will be leaving with thy badge," Winifred promised. "See that you do," Erica giggled. "Go, Abra!" "Emerald Razorleaf." Winifred sent in her Meganium, and the Abra fell in 2 turns. Growlithe came in next, and Winifred switched Emerald for Eliza. Eliza took an Ember attack, but she hardly felt it. She retaliated with a level 8 Magnitude attack that took down the canine. Erica's last Pokemon was Bulbasaur, that met in battle against Pixie. Bulbasaur used Sleep Powder, so Winifred had to use an Awakening to heal Pixie. Pixie was absolutely ready to fight now, and she used a very powerful flamethrower to knock out the Bulbasaur. Winifred was so proud of all 3 of her Pokemon as they won the battle. Erica approached Winifred and clapped. "Your Pokemon are so strong, my team never stood a chance," she grinned. "Naturally," Winifred smirked. "Please take the rainbow badge as a symbol of your victory." Erica handed her the 4th badge. Winifred pinned it to her cloak. She was halfway home now. From the winnings she got in the gym and Pixie's fiery fight against the Bulbasaur, she took her to the shopping complex and bought a Firestone. Pixie was overjoyed, and as soon as they left the building, Winifred gave it to her. Pixie placed her paw on the stone and evolved into a tall blonde fox with 9 gorgeous tails. Her Pokédex beeped. Ninetales has been registered to your Pokédex. Now Winifred's team was fully evolved, and everyone was a lot stronger than before. That's when Winifred noticed a Team Rocket grunt slinking into the game corner. She pursued him and battled him, claiming victory and discovering an entrance to a secret base inside the casino. Well, she wasn't about to let these imbeciles continue to run their operation here, not when there were people trying to earn a living. Besides, these guys annoyed her more than her sisters or Trask ever did. One by one, Winifred battled and defeated the Rocket Grunts and looted everything she could get her hands on. She left no stone unturned, and finally all of her rampaging drew out a tall man in a dark suit. He glared at her, and she returned the look. "So you're the punk that has been disrupting my plans since the excavation of fossils in Mount Moon," he snarled. Winifred was always forgetting that her guise was of her teenage self in the eyes of others. "Correct," she laughed. "And who art thou?" "I am the leader of Team Rocket. My name is Giovanni, and you are interfering with private affairs. I plan on cornering the market on selling Pokemon to the highest bidder, the rarer the better, and you've been standing in our way by taking out my employees." He cracked his knuckles. "Such despicable deeds done for money. Pitiful, if you ask me," she chortled, and his temper rose again. "We shall see who is pitiful when I crush you and take your Pokemon," he snapped. "Over my dead body," she replied. "Parasect, go!" He sent in his bug and grass type. "Susie, get him!" Winifred sent in Jinx. Susie did well to decrease the Parasect's health under half, but the leech life attack hurt her and restored some of its energy. Susie used Powder Snow again, and this time she knocked out the Parasect. Giovanni sent in a Gengar next, which Winifred countered with Mary. Mary used Bite and took down the Gengar's health to below half. It used Curse, which ended up killing it, but made Mary lose health at the end of each turn. Winifred chortled as he sent in Ghastly, and she switched Mary out for Cobbler, removing the effect of Curse immediately. Ghastly used the same trick to lay a curse on Cobbler, and while it worked, on his next turn, Cobbler's Bite attack defeated Giovanni. Winifred laughed at his rage. "Your Pokemon are strong and obey your every command, but you have not seen the last of me. I assure you that." He stormed off, calling for his grunts to clear out. Winifred picked up the last piece of loot and pocketed a Sylph Scope. As she exited through the game corner, an elderly lady invited her for tea as a thank you. Winifred accepted and took a bottle of the tea to go with her as well. Winifred went back to the game corner, bought all the coins she needed instead of wasting time at the slots, and walked to the prize booth where she bought a Pidgeot named Elena. On her way through to Lavender Town, Winifred decided to take a shortcut through Saffron City. She gave the tea to the crabby guard who had been refusing to let her pass, and this time she was admitted. In Saffron City, Winifred got the TM for Psychic and saw a fighting dojo. Their board advertised that if all the trainers are defeated, the challenger got a Pokemon. Winifred consulted her Pokemon, and they all wanted to try the challenge. They got into the fighting dojo and fought the first 3 trainers inside. Winifred challenged the 4th, and he accepted. She decided to let Mary handle this one, as her Granbull had been on a hot streak. Mary defeated the Armaldo, then took down his Lickitung. Both Winifred and her Granbull laughed as he sent in a Plusle. The Plusle used Charge, but Mary used Rock Slide and took it down to almost the end of its health. She'd taken a little damage, but she was still ready to fight, and Winifred didn't think it was necessary to refill her health. As Mary prepared to use Brick Break, Plusle used Spark and slammed into Mary's gut. The Spark was supercharged due to the Charge move. Winifred saw the light leave Mary's eyes and the shock wash over her Pokemon's face just before she fell to the ground, dead. Winifred's heart broke as her Granbull laid on the ground, motionless, and all she could see in her mind was the image of her sister Mary disappearing in a cloud of red dust. As Eliza came in to avenge her friend and knock out the Plusle, Winifred cradled her Granbull's body in her arms. She returned her to her ball, then left before fighting the last trainer. She bought a Revive and cracked it open. It was empty. "Impossible!" Winifred snapped. "How can this be empty?" Her Pokedex piped up. "You have used your allotted 3 life potions, one to bring back Cobbler, the second to bring back Emerald, and the last to restore Pixie. Revives will now be empty when you pick them up or buy them," it informed her, and she took the decks from her bag as she walked outside. "Why? You said Sarah had 4!" she bellowed. Sarah's Pokédex was only merciful because Carlos was the only Pokemon Sarah truly bonded with. He was her partner, her protector, and she'd raised him from an egg. It took mercy on your sister. I will do no such thing, as you have only just begun to bond with yours. And even then, the lesson you need to learn from this journey does not involve my being merciful. Perhaps in your next test, your proctor will be different," it said. "Allow me to bring Mary back. This was the fault of mine, not my Granbull," she shouted at it. "Please, wilt thou help me?" "No, your lesson in this test does not involve my being merciful. You must bury your Granbull and take the consequences of your actions," it insisted. "Why art thou so cruel?" She slammed it shut and stuffed it in her bag. In her head, all she saw was Mary being ripped away from her by the Magikai Maxima that she had insisted on using. Book had tried to warn her, but she'd ignored it, just as Winifred ignored the rules the Pokédex set forth. Her bullheadedness had gotten her Granbull killed, just as it had gotten her sisters killed. She took Mary's Pokeball to the PC and buried her in the graves, her heart breaking. She placed her Pidgeot, Elena, on the team and returned to the fighting dojo where she defeated the leader in a matter of moves. Her Pokemon choices at the end were a Clamperl and a Pidgey. Neither were appealing. Mary had died for this. She chose the Pidgey that she named Faulkner and started to go back to Lavender Town to recharge her magic and her heart. Now she had to get home to her sisters no matter what it took. That night, she slept in Lavender Town's Pokemon Center, and Cobbler snuggled up between her arms. She held him close and cried. Eliza slept in the bathtub in the water. Susie, Emerald, Pixie, and now Elena slept in various parts of the room. No one wanted to be alone tonight. And now... Previously on episode 6, Winifred spent plenty of time training her new Pidgeot to become stronger. After what happened to her Granbull, no one was losing to an electric rodent again. Elena proved to be very keen at battling, and her speed was unmatched by anyone else on the team. Winifred was impressed. All through the training, Winifred kept sensing something dark within the Pokemon Tower in Lavender Town. She was making her way back to the Pokemon Center when she heard the villagers talking about Mr. Fuji being kidnapped by Team Rocket while he was in the tower. Winifred arched her brow and thought this would be the perfect opportunity to test Elena's skills. She walked into the tower and felt magic flowing through the area. This place was an altar. Winifred walked up the stairs and examined the graves of lost Pokemon. Perhaps, before setting off again, she should bury her fallen comrades in this place. While she explored, she found someone she really didn't want to run into. Jeffrey. He saw her and smirked. "What are you doing here, Winifred? You lose another Pokemon?" he taunted her. She raised her hand to zap him, but held back. "I did, but that is not why I am here. Seems thy partners are alive as well. What art thou doing in this place?" "I was chasing a wild Cubone and it ran in here. Managed to catch it, though," he said smugly. "Since we're here, how about I shrink your team even more?" "Do your worst." Winifred accepted his challenge. Rattata came in first, and Winifred sent in Cobbler. Cobbler used his double kick move and knocked out the rat immediately. Jeffrey brought in his Mudkip, and Shockwave ended its short battle. Jeffrey had caught his own Meganium, and Winifred decided it was time to let Elena have her first official battle. She burst in and met with a Razor Leaf attack, but she brushed it off with a smirk. She used Aerial Ace, which took down the Meganium savagely, and Elena was a force to be reckoned with. Jeffrey's Blossom tried to fight the bird, but Elena's critical power wing attack proved to be too much. His starter Ditto was the last opponent. Elena used wing attack and left it with 1 health point left. Ditto transformed into Pidgeot, but Elena used quick attack, which ended the battle. Winifred stroked her bird proudly. "Welcome to the team," she told her, and Elena smiled. Jeffrey returned his Pokemon to its ball. "I took it easy on you. I won't be so kind next time," he spat. "I'm shaking," Winifred said sarcastically as he stormed off. "Now to deal with that pesky Team Rocket." Winifred made her way up the tower and caught a stray Totodile that she called Toady. There were other witches in this tower afflicted by ghosts. Winifred battled each one and freed her fellow casters along the way. She felt a presence following her the entire time she was up there, and at one point, the ghost of a Marowak attacked. She battled it and felt the dark energy around the tower disappear. When she reached the top floor, she fought her way through 4 Team Rocket grunts guarding an old man. Between her Pokemon and her lightning powers, they ran with their tails between their legs. She approached the elderly man. "Mr. Fuji, I presume?" she asked. "Yes, that's me," Mr. Fuji responded. "I appreciate your help, young lady, but I assure you I came here of my own accord. I came to calm the spirit of that Marowak I heard attack you. It seems you helped it move forward from this world. It was Team Rocket that killed the Marowak, and her baby was caught by a young man earlier." "I know the boy of which you speak," Winifred said lowly. "I suppose Cubone will be better off with him than vulnerable to the likes of Team Rocket," Mr. Fuji said. "As thanks for your help, I'd like you to have this." He handed her a Pokeflute. "It awakes any sleeping Pokemon and quells the anger in others." "Thank thee. I shall use it well," she promised. The first thing Winifred did was use it to awaken a sleeping Slackoth over on Route 16 near Celadon City, which she caught and named Lazy. Now that the path was cleared, Winifred went to Route 17 and caught a Minun that she named Jenna. Minun was the other species related to Plusle. Winifred planned to raise this one to avenge her Granbull's death. In a house nearby, a woman saw that Winifred was raising a Pidgeot, so she gifted her the HM for the move Fly. The HM transfigured into Winifred's old broom when the woman went inside. Elena touched it and learned the move as well. Winifred journeyed back over to Lavender Town by flight for one more magic recharge before going down to Route 12 the next day. There she awakened a sleeping Clefairy with the flute and caught a new friend in Pinky. It started to storm midway through the day as she hiked. A fisherman invited her into his house to shelter her from the storm, and he gifted her a super rod. Outside, they heard a loud splash and a cry. Winifred and the fisherman ran outside to see a large orange mouse thrashing in the stormy waves. Winifred used the super rod to pull the Pokemon to safety. It was a grateful Raichu that wanted to go with Winifred, and she added Denki to her meadow. Route 13 yielded a run-in with a Scizor that Winifred tried to catch, but ended up knocking out in the end as it refused to go in the Pokeballs she threw. Route 14 brought a failed encounter with a Poliwrath, and Route 15 was also a failure with an Elekid. Winifred, frustrated, crossed into Fuchsia City and rested in the Pokemon Center for the night. The next day, on Route 18, she caught a Curlia that she named Carla. Fuchsia City was home to the famous Safari Zone. Winifred's Pokédex explained that each new area inside it counted as an encounter. She entered, and of the areas, she came out with Naruto the Ninjask, Stan the Hitmonlee, and Waldo the Fortress. Winifred found the gym, but she didn't feel ready to fight it yet, so she found a pond in town and fished out a wild Medicham that was taking a soak. She named her Jasmine. While exploring the Safari Zone, Winifred had found the HM for Surf and a set of gold teeth. Apparently, these belonged to the Warden, who she returned it to, and he rewarded her with the HM for Strength. Winifred and her Pokemon slept at the Pokemon Center, preparing to battle the gym the next day. And now... Previously on Episode 7... The 5th gym stands before me. I cannot lose here. If I am victorious, I will be over halfway finished with this wretched trial, Winifred told herself. She patted the Pokeballs in her bag. All right, here we go. Winifred entered the gym, walked towards the leader, and ran right smack into an invisible wall. She shook herself out of her stupor and looked at the sign on the wall. Fuchsia Gym, home of the ninja. Those mystical warriors from across the waters resided here? Well, they would be no match for a witch of her prodigious skill. That said, she faced every gym trainer bravely, and her team showed no mercy even against the fiercest of opponents. Winifred did feel obligated to run back to the Pokemon Center once before returning. She fought her way through the maze of invisible walls conjured by the ninjas, finally gaining access to the leader. He turned to her and sized her up. Just from your stature, I can tell your competence with Pokemon is high, but your heart is not in it. You need both if you hope to defeat me, he said. I, Koga, the master of the ninjas, will put you to the test. My heart is in every battle, Winifred responded darkly. You will be taught a lesson of your own. We shall see. Koga plucked a Pokeball from his belt. Dustox! His giant moth burst into the arena. Susie, prepare for battle! Winifred sent in her Jinx. Susie was faster than Dustox, and her confusion attack landed at critical power. The Dustox fainted, but Winifred could tell these Pokemon were stronger than her own. Koga sent in a Duskull next, a ghost type, so Winifred spared her Jinx and sent in Cobbler. Duskull used Curse to cut its health and lay a curse on her Jolteon. At the end of each turn, Cobbler would lose health. Cobbler rushed it with Bite and knocked it out, but Curse remained active and he lost health. Trico was their next opponent, but because of Curse, Winifred chose to spare Cobbler's life and send in Pixie, even though he still wanted to battle. Trico hit Pixie with a slam, but it hardly made a scratch. She used Flamethrower and took out the Gecko. Koga's last Pokemon was Meganium. Winifred began to wonder how many of these Pokemon actually roamed this region. Pixie's Flamethrower was powerful, but not enough to knock it out. She was then afflicted by Poison Powder, and her health drained slowly. Winifred cursed as Koga healed his Meganium. Pixie used Flamethrower again, but was just shy of knocking it out, and Koga healed once more. Winifred was growing impatient with this battle as she called for Pixie to burn it again, still leaving health. Fortunately, Koga was out of potions, so Pixie's burst of speed allowed her to finish off their opponent and win the battle. Winifred cheered for her as Pixie, panting, walked over to her side, still poisoned. Koga approached them, looking proud but stern. As I said before, your prowess for battles is high, but your heart was not in this fight. Not until your Pokemon defeated the last opponent did you truly cheer for them. You've earned a badge, but to be called a real Pokemon trainer? Not yet. He handed her the soul badge, and she pinned it to her cloak. Thank thee. I shall strive to do better, she said. I can tell something happened on your journey recently that has shaken your faith in your skills and your attachment to your Pokemon. Whatever it is, do not let it control you, he advised her, and she nodded. He was referring to the death of her Granbull. Winifred took her Pokemon to the center to be healed, and then she decided to train her team. During this time, she tried allowing herself to open up to them again. She cheered for them in every fight they faced, encouraged them to keep going when they felt weak, and above all, reminded them that she cared. Emerald, who had been close to Mary, laid his head on Winifred's shoulder as she trained her other Pokemon. She patted his face gently. I know. You mourn her too, she said. 'Twas my fault she died, Emerald. Do not blame thyself, as I can feel thee doing. You are not to blame. Thou art the leader of this little team, but ultimately it is I who is responsible for you. Perhaps if we work together again, we can rebuild our little family. Emerald nuzzled her cheek lovingly, and Winifred hugged him. Training finished late that evening, so they returned to the Pokemon Center in Fuchsia to sleep. Emerald laid on the floor next to her bed as Cobbler slept at her feet. When the sun rose, so did their group. Winifred checked her map and her gut tightened. The next gym was in Saffron City, where Mary had perished. Emerald laid his head on her shoulder and they nodded to each other. It was time to go face the 6th gym leader, whether they liked it or not. She had to go back to her family. Together with Elena stretching her wings, Winifred ascended into the air on her broom and flew to Saffron City. She passed over a barrier of some sort as she did and shared a confused look with her Pidgeot. When they landed and rested at the center, Winifred left to find the gym. Before she got far, a man on the street grabbed her by the shoulders. She zapped him immediately, but he begged mercy. I wasn't trying to hurt you, kid, I promise. I just need help. My company has been taken over by Team Rocket, and no one can get their Pokeballs to work. I saw you fly in with your Pidgeot, and since you can use your Pokemon, we need you to rescue Sylph Company. We asked another trainer this morning, but he hasn't come out yet, he pleaded. I haven't the time for your problems. I will not be pulled into another fight with those idiotic grunts, she refused. Please, you're our only hope of getting the business in the town running again. They're blocking off entry to shops and the gym. If we can't use our gym, trainers will stop coming here. At this, Winifred agreed. She needed her badge. She walked into the huge building and found no guards at the bottom. The moment she exited the stairs, however, they were on top of her. Winifred, working together with her Pokemon, cleared out every rocket grunt that ran their way. She knew this wasn't going to be simple from the moment she stepped on a tile and was whisked away to another part of the building. Eventually, she grabbed a pass key from a running grunt who'd just met her wrath. Using it in tandem with the tiles, Winifred made her way forward and ran into the other trainer they asked for help, Jeffrey. Winifred's eyes practically rolled into the back of her head when he spotted her. Did they really send you to help me with these goons? I've been doing fine on my own, he snarled. I'm going to take care of the Team Rocket boss, not you. By all means, Winifred chortled. I've no interest in. We're going to battle each other to see who earns the right to fight him. He challenged her, and Winifred just stared at him. Dost thou really wish to do this during a hostage crisis? She asked him. I'll prove I'm better than you when I beat you and then their boss, he said. Winifred shook her head as he sent in Togetic. Thy priorities seem a bit clouded, she said. Susie, Powder Snow. 2 Powder Snows and no retaliation from the Togetic proved just how skilled Jeffrey was. He sent in a Clefable that Susie whittled down with confusion until she was put to sleep by Sing. Winifred tried to wake her, but it was no use, so she switched into Emerald, who finished it off. Jeffrey brought in Dugong, and Emerald used Razor Leaf, but it missed. Dugong used Icy Wind, which brought Emerald down to just above half health, due to its critical power. Winifred chose to heal her Meganium, and Emerald took a weaker Icy Wind. Winifred started a swap, but Emerald stomped his feet and stared hard at her. Winifred let him continue battling. Dugong switched to the more powerful Aurora Beam move, but Emerald took it like a champ. He tried using Razor Leaf again, but the foe dodged. Winifred felt herself becoming irritated, but Emerald was fuming. He took Aurora Beam again, but Emerald dug in his heels and unleashed a powerful Razor Leaf that took Dugong to below half health. He took another hit, but dealt the finishing blow, panting from the damage he took. Winifred shouted words of gratitude and encouragement to him. Jeffrey brought in a Sea King, which took a massive hit from Razor Leaf, but it survived. The Sea King was fast enough to hit Emerald twice with Horn Attack before being taken out. Last came Jeffrey's Ditto, who transformed into Meganium. He pulled off a Body Slam before Winifred opted to swap him for Pixie. Pixie dodged Body Slam and let loose a powerful flamethrower that took out the Ditto. Winifred won, and Jeffrey growled angrily. With his team in no shape to fight, he departed from the building. Winifred started to move forward when a man who had been hiding nearby ran up to her. That battle was amazing. The kid you defeated had an attitude that would have gotten him clobbered by the rocket boss. You'll be strong enough to defeat him, I'm sure. Listen, I've got a Pokemon here that was abandoned by a Team Rocket grunt after they lost to that boy. Would you take it and raise it? I think you'll be best suited for it. He handed her a ball, and she opened it to find a Granbull! Winifred gasped. It was a female, and it looked terrified. Winifred's heart soared seeing such a beautiful sight. It wasn't Mary, but it could be her successor. Hello, dear. I'd like to be thy new trainer if thou wouldst have me. The Granbull ran over to her and hugged her waist. Winifred patted her on the head and bestowed the name of Mary the Second. I'll send thee to a meadow for now, but I'll call on you when ready. She returned her new Pokemon to her ball and sent it to the PC meadow. Now for that blasted boss! Winifred pushed her way through one last grunt before walking into the office of the company president. He was being verbally harassed by none other than Giovanni. Winifred cleared her throat and Giovanni turned to face her. He glared, eyes narrowed. You again! Why must you continue to interfere with my plans? He inquired, and Winifred shrugged. Because people keep asking me to fight thee, she responded truthfully. Besides, your goals are pitiful, to say the least. Stealing and selling these creatures for a profit? What good is power if all you do is use it for money? Money is what rules this world, child. The more you have, the more you can control. The more you control, the more money you make. If I get my hands on this company's Master Ball to mass produce it for my people, we can capture every rare Pokemon in the world and sell them to the highest bidder. Corner the market on Pokemon and people won't be able to do a thing for themselves. And as proof, I'll take yours from you. Such a jest. Dost thou believe I would let that happen? She chortled. Swablu, attack! He sent in a fluffy bird and Winifred laughed. Laugh if you feel the need. This Pokemon can evolve into a powerful dragon type. Pity it will not get the chance, she said, throwing her own ball. Cobbler, shockwave! Cobbler's electric attack sizzled into the Swablu and knocked it out easily. A Natu came in next and met the same fate. Next came a behemoth of a Pokemon called Hariyama, a powerful fighting type. Winifred withdrew Cobbler and sent in Elena since she had better defenses than Susie. Winifred called for her to use her Aerial Ace, which did a sizable chunk of damage, but Hariyama used Whirlwind and forced Elena to switch out with Eliza. Eliza used Surf and finished it off. Giovanni brought in a Flareon, which Eliza smacked with Earthquake, ending the battle. Giovanni was furious, but powerless to fight on. Winifred crossed her arms and smirked. You may have stopped my plans this time, but mark my words, we will meet again. You will not be so lucky next time. He glared at her and left with his grunts in tow. The president ran up to her. Young lady, I cannot thank you enough for ousting that man and his goons from my business. As a token of my gratitude, please take this prototype of our company's Master Ball. It catches any Pokemon without fail. Use it wisely, as it is the only one of its kind. Thank thee, sir, and it was my pleasure to teach that pompous dunderhead a lesson, Winifred said, and made her way back to the streets of Saffron City. She spent the night at the Pokemon Center, spending some time with Mary the Second, who was still very uneasy about her new surroundings. Winifred's team made her feel comfortable, and she regaled her new friend with tales of Mary's victories in battle. Mary the Second felt more confident in herself when it was time to sleep. The next day, Winifred approached the gym and found it filled with magic. It wasn't long before she fought her way through the gym trainers and the maze. When she arrived in the gym leader's domain, she met a witch. I am Sabrina, leader of this gym, and you are Winifred Sanderson. I am impressed with how quickly you made your way to me. You did not get lost as Mary did and Sarah before her, she said, and Winifred gasped. Thou knowest my sisters. Please tell me, are they all right? Where are they? She questioned her, but the leader held up her hand. I have faced your sisters in previous battles, and I am the only person in Kanto that remembers them. Mary defeated me with ease, while Sarah lost an entire team to me before coming back and claiming victory. They passed their tests, but you are still a ways off from reaching them. Defeat me, and it will put you a step closer, Sabrina explained. Then I shall, Winifred said. "Go, Croconaw," Sabrina sent in her water type. "Eliza, 'tis your turn." Winifred brought in her shiny Whiscash. Eliza opened with strength that knocked Croconaw down to below half health. Her opponent used Scary Face to lower her speed, then hit her with Slash, barely making a dent. Eliza finished it with strength, and in came a Mareep. Eliza struck with Earthquake, which ended the electric-type short battle. Sabrina brought out her Slugma, which Eliza fought with Surf and defeated it instantly. Winifred let out a proud cheer for her Whiscash as the last opponent came in. A Rhydon. Winifred let Eliza finish the battle with Surf, and her Whiscash claimed victory over the gym leader all by herself. Winifred rushed to the pond in the center of the arena and plucked her fish from it. She hugged her, and Eliza grinned. She had swept the entire team. Sabrina approached Winifred. "You defeated me with more ease than even Mary. Your Whiscash is powerful indeed, and a testament to your skill as a trainer. After tragedy befell your team, you closed off your heart, as Koga said. This battle, it proved to be open again. The Marsh badge is yours to keep." She handed Winifred her 6th badge, and Winnie pinned it to her cloak. "Your next badge awaits on Cinnabar Island. The winds will be too strong to fly, so you will make a journey across the water. I sense another, greater challenge awaits you, Winifred Sanderson. We shall see if you defeat it, or if it defeats you." With these foreboding words in mind, Winifred left the gym and went to the Pokemon Center for some rest. And now, previously on Episode 8. There were 2 spots on Winifred's map that led to Cinnabar Island, and she decided to set forth from Route 19 outside of Fuchsia City. Winifred looked at Eliza, who was not big enough to carry her on her back, and found herself with a dilemma. How was she going to get to this island with such strong winds rushing overhead, and only a small fish as her transportation? As she pondered her situation, Emerald popped out of his ball and sniffed around with Eliza. The pair of them grinned when they found something. Emerald bellowed to Winifred, who was in deep thought. "What is it, Emerald?" she exhaled. Emerald and Eliza gestured with their heads to an abandoned rowboat. "Well, look at that! Good work, you two!" Winifred examined the vessel, and it was almost ship-shape with the exception of one hole. She used her magic to fix the leak. Then Emerald pushed it into the water for her, Eliza swimming out in front. "Now how do you plan on pulling this thing?" Winifred asked Eliza. Eliza looked at Winifred and made a zapping sound. "I beg your pardon? You want me to use my lightning on you?" Her Pokedex beeped. Whiscash, a water and ground type. While most water-type Pokemon are weak to electric-type attacks, Whiscash is unaffected. "Eliza, you brilliant little fish, you!" Winifred exclaimed. She climbed in the boat and cast a lightning bolt from her hands that wrapped around Eliza like reins. Eliza slapped the water with her tail, then took off like a shot. Winifred sailed across the waters of Route 19, where she ran into a flying Scyther. She caught it and named him Guillotine due to the huge blades he had for arms. Over on Route 20's waters, Winifred managed to catch a Haunter named Casper. She arrived at an island and rejoiced only to find herself at the Seafoam Islands and not Cinnabar. Winifred decided she might as well explore for a moment and caught a Poliwrath there named Whirligig. Winifred sensed power in this cave, but she had to focus on her last badge. She sailed back to Fuchsia and rested there for the night since she had chosen the wrong path to Cinnabar. The following morning she set off for the other path from where she started this journey, Pallet Town. She fished in the water here and ended up catching a gorgeous Pokemon called Milotic. She named her Aphrodite. Over on the next route, she caught a Bellsprout before Eliza helped her pull the boat they'd brought with them into the water. Using the lightning reins again, Winifred set off for Cinnabar Island. It took the better part of the day to get there, and upon landing, Winifred spotted a bird Pokemon drowning in the waves off the shore. She reeled it in, caught it, and named it Longshot. She checked into the Pokemon Center for some rest and brought her team out for some socialization. Emerald slept right by her bed while Cobbler slept by her feet. Everyone else spread out in various places, Eliza, of course, in the bathtub. Winifred explored the island and stumbled upon a center where people studied fossils. Winifred met a man who said he could revive fossils, so Winifred handed hers over to the necromancer and ended up with a second Minun that she named too. Winifred prepped her team to go up against the 7th gym, but as she approached the doors, she found it locked. On the door was a sign that read, Only those with the skills to find my key may have the honor of battling me." Winifred cursed and started thinking. She looked all over the island for a key to the gym, but never found a thing until she stumbled upon an old abandoned mansion. Inside, Winnie caught a masquerade that she named Clown. Winifred had to solve a shifting wall puzzle, which eventually led her to the key the gym leader tasked her to find. While she was inside, she did have to fight a bunch of looters, and then she took the loot for herself. Her team was ready for the 7th gym battle after that. Unlocking the door was easy. Fighting her way through all the gym trainers was a bit tougher. However, her Pokemon pulled through each fight. As she approached the gym leader, the old man sized her up. "Well, someone actually found the gym key. You must be very clever to do so," he said. "My name's Blaine, and you are?" "Winifred Sanderson, your worthy opponent," she assured him. "We'll see if you live up to such a declaration," he smirked. "Let's go, Lotad." The lily pad Pokemon popped onto the field. "Your weak Pokemon is no match for us. Go, Pixie! Use thy flamethrower to burn it to ashes," Winifred commanded her Ninetales. Pixie did exactly as she was told and took down the opponent. The next Pokemon was a Weepinbell, which met a fiery end at the paws of Pixie. Blaine's Sentret was sent in next, but Pixie burned it up too. Winifred smiled at her majestic fox, who swished her 9 tails pridefully. She crouched down as her last opponent entered the field. A Bayleaf. Flamethrower brought the battle to an end, and Winifred cheered for Pixie, who had done it all on her own. Her Ninetales pranced over to her, and Winifred knelt to give her a hug. Blaine, who'd used baby Pokemon and one middle stage evolution against her due to lack of faith, approached her. "Normally, I too am a fire-type wielder, but I've lost my affinity for battling. That is, up to now. Your Ninetales was astounding, and I've never seen such power from even my own. You've raised her well. This badge is for you." He handed Winifred the Volcano badge, her 7th badge that she pinned to her cloak. "One more to go, it would seem." "Yes, and I look forward to earning it," Winifred told him. "Well, you certainly earned this one," Blaine congratulated her. Winifred left the gym with Pixie in tow. As she was checking her map for the final gym, she heard someone calling her name. She looked up and there was a man running towards her. His face looked familiar, but only just. "Winifred! Hey, Winifred! It's me, Bill!" Bill was dashing over. "You just beat Blaine?" "See for thine own eyes." Winifred showed off her 7 badges. "Impressive!" he gasped. "Hey, you wouldn't happen to be available to help me out for a bit, would you?" "Not even a chance. I've one more badge to claim," she responded quickly. "Dang, that's a shame, because I was heading over to the Sevi Islands. There's a ton of Pokemon over there, and I've heard tell of a powerful legend at the top of Mount Ember," Bill sighed. Winifred paused and looked at Pixie. Pixie nodded. "Perhaps we can spare a bit of time to assist thee," she reconsidered. "Great! My buddy's pulling up to the dock now. We'll take his boat over," Bill said, leading the way. Winifred recalled Pixie into her ball and smirked. "A powerful legend could prove useful to me," Winifred said to herself. "Should one of my Pokemon meet an untimely end, having such power as a fail-safe would be wise." She boarded the boat with Bill and they sailed to one island. He introduced her to his friend and they found out Bill's PC expertise was needed to repair the system on the islands. Bill looked at Winifred and exhaled. "I hate asking, but could you do me a favor? I've got a friend on 2 Island that is a big collector of rocks. I've got a meteorite for him, but they need me here. Would you take it to him? It'll give you free access to all of the islands," Bill requested. Winifred started to protest, but being left unsupervised was tantalizing. "With pleasure," she lied, and took the package from Bill. She also received a tri-pass to get to all the islands. Winifred started her legend hunt as soon as she was out of sight. She started her search at Treasure Beach, where she found a pincer, which was caught and named Tweezers. But no sign of a legend. In the harbor of one island, Winifred rescued a drowsy from drowning. She caught her and named her Dorothy. Her search took her to Kendall Road, where she caught an Armaldo called Ronaldo. She paddled a few trainers along the way and inquired with them about the legend of Mount Ember. They guided her in the right direction, and Winifred made her way up the road. She had to use Eliza to pull her across the waters again on a raft she borrowed from a man at the local hot spring. They made it to the shore by dusk and set up camp at the bottom of Mount Ember. Winifred sat at the fire with her 6 Pokemon, contemplating what this legend might even be. She also wondered if Mary or Sarah had been here previously. Had they encountered legends? She took out her Pokedex and opened it. "I know thou dost not like me, but might I ask thee a question?" she asked. "Certainly," it beeped. "This legend, did my sisters face any?" "Yes, Sarah caught 2 legendary Pokemon. Her first was a Mewtwo that she named Timmy. He had been hunted by Team Rocket, but she protected him, and he chose to go with her. The second was a Moltres named Brimstone. She encountered him on her way to the Pokemon League. It was quite the battle." "Sarah caught 2 legends?" Winifred repeated in disbelief. The Pokedex showed her a photo of Sarah with Timmy, then another of her with Brimstone. Winifred was shocked that her ditzy little sister caught these, but she almost felt a sense of pride in Sarah. Sarah was a fierce trainer. She endured many losses out here, more than you, but much less carelessly than yours. Her losses were very tragic indeed, but her legendary Pokemon chose her. I am stunned. What of Mary? Mary was the proud owner of 4 legendary Pokemon. Winifred dropped her Pokedex in shock. Ow. "Sister Mary tamed 4 legends? Art thou jesting? My sister?" Winifred exclaimed. "Mary is the best Pokemon trainer of the 3 of you. Her very first Pokemon was the legendary Rayquaza, which she called Broomy. She chose him when everyone else was afraid of a challenge. He was her partner from the start of her journey." The Pokedex showed Winifred a photo of Mary with Broomy. She looked so happy, and Winifred's heart actually tugged. Along her journey, Mary caught a Zapdos named Chico. After that was another electric legendary called Raikou. She named it Aslan. Her final legendary Pokemon was the water-type Suicune that she named after your sister Sarah. That battle was formidable, to say the least. It took everything Mary had to catch her Suicune. To say I am surprised would be an understatement. Mary is soft-spoken, so to hear this is astounding, Winifred stammered. Mary is better than both you and Sarah in terms of being a trainer. While Sarah lost over 12 Pokemon, and you've lost several, Mary only lost 4. She never had to use all of her allotted potions either. She raised her Pokemon with the utmost care and love. Sarah did the same with all of her Pokemon as well, mourning those she lost, yet treasuring their memories. This is why they were chosen to guard those legendary Pokemon. "Dost thou believe I may be able to tame a legend?" she inquired. "Perhaps. We will see tomorrow." It went silent after that. Winifred put it back in her bag and prepared to sleep in the grass that night. Emerald walked over and gestured for her to rest against him, and she welcomed it. Winifred laid against her Meganium as Pixie laid on one side of her trainer, Susie laying on the other. Cobbler waited until Winifred draped her cloak over her body like a blanket to climb up and sleep with her. Eliza slept underwater near the shore, and Elena nested in a nearby tree. Winifred fell asleep, hoping that maybe she would be worthy of a legend like her sisters. If all else failed, she did have a Master Ball at her disposal. The hike up Mount Ember was taxing, but as she caught her camera-up named Cammy, she could sense great power ahead of her. She hiked as far as she could and had to solve a sliding boulder puzzle to reach the summit. There, she came face to face with a giant red kaiju of a Pokemon. Her Pokedex went off. Groudon, a legendary Pokemon. "This Pokemon is known as the deity of all land," it said. "I shall catch thee, and prove myself worthy of your power," Winifred yelled up to the roaring Groudon. It glared at her. "Master Ball, go!" She threw the Master Ball without hesitation, or even so much as an attack. Groudon was sucked in, and... click! "Groudon has been registered to your Pokedex," it beeped. "We'll see if it takes a shine to you." "I'll make sure of it. Godzilla will respect me as my sister's legends did them," Winifred said, holding the Master Ball in her palm. "Tell me, are there more legends out there?" "2 more. Seek them out if you wish, but not until you finish here. I will find and catch the both of them." Winifred swore. She made her way back down Mount Ember, camping overnight again, and the next day she went to 2 Island where she caught Sebastian the Crawdaunt. Still, she had a task to complete, and a few more encounters to grab, but the call of those other legends was strong. And now, previously on episode 9. Winifred made her way to 2 Island to deliver the meteorite to Bill's friend, but somehow ended up helping the man find his child. Tracking was Mary's strength, so if Winifred wanted to get on with her legendary hunt, she needed to think like Mary. Over on 3 Island, she caught the fossil Pokemon Relicanth, beat up a bunch of annoying bikers, caught a coughing named Coffee, then caught a Swablu named Cloud. Winifred ended up finding the daughter of the Game Corner owner, and saved her from a Marowak that she also caught and named Bonk. The kid was so grateful she hugged Winifred, but Winnie's impatience to move forward with her journey caused her to ignore the gesture. Upon returning the child to her father and delivering the rock, Winifred was finally able to leave those blasted islands and do what she wanted, seeking out the remaining 2 legends in the Kanto region. Her first stop was the Seafoam Islands. Her Pokedex had detected power deep within the caves. Solving puzzles and sailing across frozen waters brought her to a great blue lion with a flowing purple mane. Her Pokedex beeped. Suicune, a legendary water type, previously owned by Mary Sanderson, bearing the name Sarah. Suicune, I am the elder sister of thy previous trainer. You found her worthy, I assure thee I am as well. Winifred spoke to her, but Suicune grouched and growled at her. It does not believe you, her Pokedex said bluntly. It is looking for Mary. Then I will prove to you that I am worthy, Winifred declared. Cobbler! Shockwave! Cobbler burst from his ball and zapped Suicune, lowering her health below half. Winifred had him use Bite a couple of times as Suicune summoned a rainstorm. Winifred could tell she was weakening the beast and swapped into Eliza so she could start attempting to catch. Every ball she threw, Suicune broke out of it, growling apprehensively. She wanted Mary, not Winifred, and so she kept breaking the balls thrown her way. Winifred switched Eliza out for Cobbler and tried a few more times, but the balls still broke. She was furious. How was she not worthy of her sister's Pokemon? Cobbler, bite! Winifred commanded, and her rage poured into her Jolteon. Cobbler used his attack, and it came off at critical power. Suicune was defeated, and in a flash of water vapor, she disappeared without a trace. Impossible! How could she not see my worth? She was caught by my sister and named for the other. Perhaps she sensed something in you that you yourself are not aware of, her Pokedex guessed. I should have been worthy. She pulled the dex into her hand. Where is the next legend? The power plant off Route 10. Sensors indicate great power there, her guide said. Then we shall leave for that place immediately, Winifred huffed. She looked at Cobbler, who was cowering ever so slightly at her feet. Thy bite was too powerful, but perhaps you fed off of my frustration. 'Twas not your fault entirely. He perked up a bit at that. Winifred flew from the Seafoam Islands to Cerulean City, where she rested for the night. She was most displeased with the outcome of her encounter with Suicune. Why was Mary worthy of such a beast, and not her? She'd captured Groudon, albeit with a Master Ball guaranteed not to fail, but she had caught it. Emerald, laying on the floor beside her bed, looked up and nudged her back tenderly. You think I am a worthy trainer, don't you, Emerald? She asked, turning over to face him. Emerald nodded and smiled at her. At least someone does. He gestured at all her other Pokemon, and she exhaled. I suppose you're right. Tomorrow I'll make sure to prove myself to the other legend. He gave her a confident nod. The following morning, Winifred and her team set off for Route 10. The small boat was pushed into the water, and Eliza ferried her down past Rock Tunnel. She looked at the cave entrance as they passed, and recalled that being where Emerald had died, and she'd used a life potion to revive him. Back then, she'd thought that if she'd known she would have caught other grass types, she would have left him dead, but not now. Emerald had carried her team on his back since she caught him early in her journey. She had lost her first partners, and he remained from the original team. Emerald was her partner, and he gave her the confidence she needed to catch this remaining legend. They docked just outside of the power plant, and Winifred entered, finding it abandoned. Inside, she caught Clover the Ralts, looted what she could, and stepped up to a giant steel statue. It began to move, and Winifred realized this was the other legend. one she had been given the choice of at the start of her journey. Registeel, a legendary steel type. These creatures have a habit of exploding. This Registeel was defeated by Mary Sanderson, who opted not to catch it due to her extensive reserves. Her Pokedex beeped. Winifred took a deep breath, remembered her mistake with Suicune, and looked at the behemoth. Registeel, Titan of Titanium, I come before you as but a humble trainer. My sister chose to let thee go, but I wish to prove my worth to you. I captured the legendary Groudon with a Master Ball, but for thee I wish to battle. If you deem me worthy of thy power, please join my Pokemon. Winifred spoke strongly. Registeel clanged its fists together and took battle stance. Very well. Cobbler, Thunder Wave. Cobbler executed his paralysis move flawlessly, laying the status condition on the Titan. Registeel used Iron Defense to boost its defensive stats, and Winifred took the opportunity to switch in Pixie. Steel was weak to fire. She commanded Pixie to use Flamethrower, and Pixie's burning force brought it below half health. Registeel used a move to boost its special defense next, allowing Pixie to weaken it more with Flamethrower. Registeel used Ancient Power to inflict damage on Pixie, then boost all of its stats. Now, with paralysis and low health, Winifred swapped into Emerald. Emerald stomped his feet, staring down his foe. Paralysis caused the legendary Pokemon to stall a turn, opening the door for Emerald to use Rock Smash and send it into red health. Winifred began to throw Pokeball after Pokeball, but Registeel broke out of each one. Winifred could feel her frustration rising, but Emerald cast his gaze towards her and bayed at her to calm down. He was right. This is why she failed Suicune. Winifred calmed herself and had Emerald hit it again with Rock Smash to weaken it just a bit more, and she kept throwing Pokeballs. It took a long time, but finally, click! Registeel has been registered to your Pokedex, her guide said. It seems you have now caught up to Sarah in terms of tamed legends. I will treat thee well, Registeel, Winifred promised, pocketing his ball. She returned to Cerulean City rejuvenated and proud to have gotten on par with Sarah. Now, as she laid in the Pokemon Center's bedroom, she thought about her final gym badge. There was only one left, and she would be ready for her final challenge. Her map showed her the 8th badge resided in the first city she'd ever ventured into in Kanto, Viridian City. She flew there the very next day and approached the gym. It had been closed for a very long time, but it was teeming with activity again. She noticed many trainers rushing their Pokemon to the center for treatment, but Winifred wasn't scared. She had to win. Her stakes were too high, and she'd come too far to quit now. She walked into the gym and proceeded to lay waste to the gym trainers with her skilled team of 6 Pokemon. Those she defeated cowered in fear of her power. Even though some wielded legendary Pokemon themselves, they'd been no match for her. Winifred noticed several of these trainers looked familiar, as if she'd battled them before. When she approached the gym leader, she knew why. Before her stood Giovanni, the leader of Team Rocket, and those trainers had been his grunts. He sneered at her as she approached. This gym was my pride and joy for many years when I was a more active gym leader, but dreams of greater proportions took its place in my sight. I return here to make it a front for Team Rocket's operations and only give badges to worthy trainers. You have defeated my grunts, but you will not defeat me. Not again. You took the Master Ball from me, you foiled our operations in Mount Moon, and you destroyed our business in Celadon's Game Corner. I refuse to let you bring down Team Rocket's final base. Seems I've accomplished more than I realized, Winifred smirked, plucking a Pokeball from her bag. I had no intention of getting mixed up in your ridiculous schemes, but thou kept sending people to fight me. Thou could have carried on had thee not threatened me, but thou hast brought this on thyself. I will defeat thee one last time, and take thy badge. You will try. Giovanni threw his first ball. Tyrogue! This tiny fighter burst from its ball. Susie, confusion! Winifred sent in her Jinx, who took down the fighting type with one attack. Winifred smirked. Your move. Giovanni brought in the fire-type Ponyta, so Winifred switched into Eliza. Ponyta used Takedown, which landed at critical power. Eliza took some damage, but she held strong and used Surf, taking out the foe. His next Pokemon was Trico. To save Eliza, Winifred brought Susie back in. Trico used Agility to raise its speed, then tried to use Slam, but Susie was faster. She dodged, whirled, and blasted it with Powder Snow, ending the Grass type. Ammonite was brought in, and Cobbler came out to face it. Ammonite failed to use Protect, and Cobbler swept it away with Shockwave. Giovanni sent out his final Pokemon, Combusken. Winifred opted for Elena, and her Pidgeot flapped her wings proudly. Combusken used Bulk Up to boost its attack and defense, which proved to be fatal. Elena used Fly, dodged the incoming attack, and knocked out the Combusken. Giovanni dropped to his knees in shock from this melee, and Winifred cheered for her team. They all hugged her, and she hugged them. They won! After a moment of celebration, she saw Giovanni back on his feet. He walked over to her, looking different. I haven't had a battle this exhilarating in years. It brought me back to my golden years as this gym's leader. I think I got bored with it, and that is why Team Rocket originally began. I was bored and sought further adventure. You made me realize why I became a trainer in the first place. The reason my team kept pursuing you is because your prowess for battle was a shock to my system. Thank you for restoring my love of being a trainer. Henceforth, Team Rocket will be disbanded, and you will carry this Earth badge as proof of your victory. He presented her with her final badge. Winifred pinned it to her cloak. Now go conquer the Pokemon League. I shall, Winifred promised. Upon leaving the gym, she rested at the Pokemon Center, preparing to leave for the last route in the morning. She didn't get far into her last leg of the journey when Jeffrey showed himself. Winifred's eyes nearly rolled into the back of her head as he smirked. So you've gotten all 8 badges. With your attitude, I never thought you'd make it this far, Winnie, he chuckled. As you can see, I've proven thee wrong, she smiled proudly. Well, let's see how you measure up to me as a trainer. Winner goes to the league first, Jeffrey declared a battle, and Winifred obliged. It was time to put this brat in his place. Jeffrey sent in Pineco, and Winifred brought in Pixie. Pineco set up spikes, which hurt any Pokemon entering the battlefield. Winifred had to keep this in mind, as the continual damage would be wrought on her team. Pixie used Flamethrower and took out the bug type. In came Crobat, which she countered with Susie. Crobat hit her hard with Air Cutter, and Susie dealt damage with Confusion. Both health bars were about the same, but Jeffrey opted to switch as Winifred chose to heal. Sableye was his next choice, a Ghost and Dark type, so Winifred sent in Elena to keep Susie safe. Elena used Aerial Ace, dealing a fair amount of damage. Sableye used Knockoff, which hardly tickled. Elena hit with Aerial Ace again, took another Dark-type hit, and knocked it out with her flying move one more time. Crobat returned to battle, and Elena demanded to stay. Winifred agreed and had her use Fly, but Air Cutter hit first at critical power. Elena was okay, but she had to heal. She dodged the wing attack and almost knocked out the Crobat, but it hit her with a critical hit, and Winifred had to heal her again, her heart pounding nervously. Elena was subjected to Confuse Ray, which caused her to hit herself, then Crobat used Mean Look, trapping her in battle. Winifred had to hope her Pidgeot could break the confusion and hit the bat one more time. Elena shook off the status and landed Quick Attack, knocking out the Crobat. Cyndaquil was brought in next, and Elena again demanded to stay. Her Aerial Ace brought it to red health, but she took a critical hit Flame Wheel. Winifred withdrew Elena with much protest from her bird and sent in Eliza. It was too risky to keep her in. Eliza took a Flame Wheel and was burned. She fought through the pain and knocked out the fire type with Surf. Clefable came in next, and Emerald was finally brought in to fight. He stomped his feet and got ready as his foe used Metronome to hit him with Volt Tackle. It didn't hurt much, and Emerald used Rock Smash, which barely did any damage, and the foe's ability Cute Charm activated. Emerald became infatuated and useless in battle. He took damage, then was promptly put to sleep by Sing. Winifred switched into Pixie, who could not be affected by the ability. Clefable used Double Slap, and Pixie retaliated with Flamethrower, which burned the opponent. Pixie was faster, and her Flamethrower took down the Clefable. Ditto was his last Pokemon, and Flamethrower knocked it to almost red health and burned it before it transformed into Pixie. Pixie and Ditto hit each other with their Quick Attack, but Pixie was faster and won the battle. Winifred's team was victorious, and Jeffrey clenched his fist. You may have won here, but I'm still going to beat the league before you. When I'm champion, you'll never beat me again, he declared, then ran off. We'll see, Winifred muttered. She walked up to the entrance to the final route and presented her 8 badges to the guard. He admitted her, and she started her final trek through Route 23, where she caught Serena the Blissey, and in Victory Road she caught her last Pokemon, a Squirtle named Leonardo. Winifred battled many trainers inside this cave, and she came out the other side in front of the Indigo Plateau, the Pokemon League. She spent hours training her Pokemon and using various TMs she'd collected on her journey to maximize their power and movesets. When training was over, she slept under the stars by a fire made by Pixie, leaning against Emerald. It had taken a lot to make it here. So many battles, so many losses of Pokemon. The loss of Mary, her Granbull, whom she'd loved. Quests from random strangers. Battles with Team Rocket. 8 badges. The capture of legendaries. And dealing with the snarky remarks of her Pokedex. Winifred was proud of herself and her Pokemon. She hadn't done this alone. Elena was a bit of a late addition to the team, but her wings carried Winifred through several battles. Pixie, whom she'd rescued from drowning and lost once, burned with ambition. Eliza, the rare shiny Pokemon who had been like a wise grandmother to her Pokemon, sailed her through many raging waters. Cobbler, her sweet Eevee who had chosen to become a Jolteon to match her powers, slept at her side. Susie, once a timid little smoochum, now a legend slayer in her own right as a Jinx. And Emerald, her partner, her confidant on this long journey. He saw many losses, died once, and came back stronger than before. At one time, such a beautiful creature would have been revolting to Winifred, but now he was her closest ally. She was excited to bring home her Pokemon to her sisters and show them she is just as competent as they are. She wanted them to meet the Pokemon who kept her going while they were gone. All she had to do was defeat the Pokemon League, and all of this would come to fruition. And now. Previously on the finale of Winifred Sanderson's Pokemon Leaf Green Adventure. Her team was trained, the matches were set, and Winifred walked into the Pokemon League with pride. She had not lost a battle since the start of her journey through the Kanto region. The Pokeballs in her bag vibrated from the excitement her Pokemon were feeling as she walked into the first room of the Elite Four. In the center stood a red-haired woman with spectacles, and she sized Winifred up as soon as she walked in. "I can almost smell the confidence on you," she said. "Perhaps overconfidence. I'll prove to thee that this confidence is no illusion. I will walk out of this room the victor, mark my words." "Who has the guts to speak to me like that?" "Winifred Sanderson, the gym challenger that has dominated the region." "I know that name. You're the one who beat Team Rocket." "Well, now I'm really looking forward to this battle. I'm Lorelei of the Elite Four, and I'll be your first and last opponent in the Pokemon League." The battle began without so much as another word, Lorelei opening with Lunatone. Winifred chose the Pokemon who'd been by her side since the beginning of this journey, Emerald. Emerald stomped his feet and grinned wickedly. He took a psychic attack, then restored his health by using Giga Drain, stealing the health points of Lunatone. Once more, Emerald took a psychic and sucked out the last of its life force. Lunatone went down, and Emerald let out a proud cry. Seal was next, and it fell to a critical power Razor Leaf. Goldeen was Emerald's next opponent, and Winifred kept him in. Another critical power Razor Leaf knocked it out. In one shot, the Magikarp that came in was knocked back into its ball. The water type ceased as Mareep came in. Winifred smirked. "We're prepared for types like electricity and fire. Emerald has a secret move no one has seen yet. Use Earthquake," Winifred commanded. Emerald stomped his feet over and over, making the entire room shake. Mareep was done for. It fell as soon as the first seismic wave collided with its body. Winifred had defeated the first member of the Pokemon League. Lorelei shook her hand with a proud smile. "You swept my team with your Meganium. I've never seen one use Earthquake before. You've raised him well. Head for the next room and take on your next opponent." Winifred walked towards the next room after healing Emerald's move powers. He walked next to her with pride. Before entering, she returned him to his ball, then stepped inside. A huge, hulking monster of a man stood before her. Winifred was both intimidated and a little turned on at the same time. He looked her over and smirked. "Beating Lorelei is no easy task. Surprised you got to me," he said. "Name's Bruno, and you are?" "Winifred Sanderson." "Let's see if you can make me respect that name," he said. "Oh, I will," she promised. Bruno brought in Bellsprout as Winifred sent in Pixie. Pixie's flamethrower incinerated her opponent. Azumarill came next, and Winnie knew not to mess around here. She swapped Pixie for Cobbler, who took a bubble beam. The spiky fur on his back stood up like needles as he unleashed Shockwave. It hit hard, but not hard enough to knock it out. Azumarill set up Rain Dance, which wasted its turn, and Cobbler knocked it out with a Shockwave. As Dustox came out to battle, Winifred sent in Elena to fight. Dustox set up Light Screen as Elena hit it with Aerial Ace. Dustox only had 1 health point left. It retaliated with Toxic, poisoning Elena. Winifred and Bruno healed their Pokemon at the same time before Elena struck with Aerial Ace again. It went to red health, used Silver Wind, tickling Winnie's Pidgeot, then went down to Quick Attack on the next turn. A Clefairy was next, and Winifred held in a laugh as Elena took it out with 1 move. Clefairy, the evolved form of Cleffa, was the last Pokemon. Elena used Fly, but Clefairy held its ground in the face of such a blow. Winifred ordered Elena to use Aerial Ace, and her bird pulled off a critical power attack, ending the fight and earning another victory over the Elite Four. Bruno clapped for her, then shook her hand. "Very well done, Winifred Sanderson. I respect your strategic thinking and battle prowess. Make a mess out of the next one for me," he said. She nodded, took a second to heal her team, then went to the next room. Only 2 more to go before she was home with her sisters. An old lady greeted her with a sneer in the next room. "So you're the young whippersnapper I've been hearing so much about. Defeated Team Rocket, got 8 badges, and even defeated the first half of the Elite Four. Winifred Sanderson, Old Oak's pride and joy. Him and his Pokedex can take a hike. In my eyes, you have to earn a Pokemon by battling instead of having it handed to you." "And just who are you to make such decisions?" Winifred scoffed. "Agatha of the Elite Four. Oak might see your potential, but you were handed your first partner. Heard it died too before you could even beat Brock. You better show me why you're really here before I let you pass me. While I did lose my horsey early on, that loss has never left my mind. I've proven myself time and again on this blasted journey. I don't have to prove myself to you in order to pass. I'll simply defeat thee." "Will you?" Agatha huffed. "Let's see you face your past head on then. Go!" She sent in a horsey, and Winnie's blood boiled. Ariel had been a good Pokemon, but she had partners who loved her just as much. She sent in Cobbler and called for Shockwave. Horsey was fried, and Cobbler looked back at Winifred with a big smile on his face. Winifred smiled back. Nincada was the next Pokemon, which had Winifred calling Cobbler back in favor of Eliza. Eliza was hit with False Swipe, but she shook it off and used Surf, instantly defeating her foe. Agatha brought out Voltorb, so Winifred kept her Whiscash in battle. Earthquake took it down quickly. Houndour met its end with a swift Surf, and the last Pokemon was Bagon. Eliza had to take a small amount of damage from Double Edge, but 2 Surfs ended the battle. Winifred smirked at Agatha, who tapped her finger on her cane. "You've proven yourself, Winifred. Your rare Whiscash is most impressive. Now on you go to the final Elite Four member," Agatha admitted. "I'll be thy next champion soon," Winifred promised, stroking the top of Eliza's head. She recalled her into her ball and walked into the final room. A man with bright red hair and a black cape awaited her. "Winifred Sanderson, I've been looking forward to our battle since I first heard about your exploits in the Kanto region. I'm Lance, the strongest member of the Elite Four. Something tells me this will be a battle I'll remember," he spoke to her. "I'll ensure that it is," Winifred promised. This was it. The last battle standing in her way of her return to Mary and Sarah. "Bring out thy Pokemon." "I shall." Lance opened with Curlia, and Winifred opened with Cobbler. Cobbler's bite attack hit so hard that it knocked the psychic type down to red and made it flinch, rendering it unable to move. Cobbler looked at Winifred, who nodded to him proudly. He crouched as Lance chose to heal Curlia. Bite landed again, and then once more, as he was far faster than Curlia. Lance sent in the fossil Pokemon Relicanth next, a rock and water type. Winifred kept Cobbler in and had him use Thunder for the first time, but it missed. Relicanth weakened Electricity's power with Mudsport, which stopped Cobbler's second Thunder attack from knocking it out. Relicanth used Ancient Power, then Cobbler finished it off with Shockwave. Zangoose was next, a stronger Pokemon. Winifred spared Cobbler and sent in Emerald to fight. Zangoose used Taunt to negate any non-attacking moves, then felt the full force of Emerald's Razor Leaf. It did survive, and Zangoose and Emerald exchanged blows, with Crush Claw hitting the Meganium, then Giga Drain restoring his health. Eventually, Giga Drain won out, and Emerald stomped his feet. Sunflora was brought in, forcing Winifred to switch Emerald for Pixie, as the opponent was a Grass type. Sunflora made the foolish mistake of using Sunny Day, which not only boosted Grass-type power, but Fire as well. Pixie's flamethrower burnt it to a crisp. His final Pokemon was Furret. On a wing and a prayer, "Fire Blast at full power!" Winifred commanded. Pixie's sun-boosted Fire Blast with lower accuracy slammed into the Furret and took it out in one shot. It was over. Winifred actually cheered loudly and called her 3 Pokemon to her side. She hugged Pixie first. She hugged Emerald around the neck, then Cobbler jumped into her arms and licked her face. Lance approached and clapped. That was the battle I was expecting from someone whose name has been floating around this region. Normally this is where I'd make you the new champion, but you have one more battle ahead. "I beg your pardon," Winifred said. "Yesterday, another trainer challenged the league and won. He's the champion, and in order to claim the title, you must face him in one final showdown. Head to his chamber. Jeffrey's waiting for you," Lance explained, and Winifred felt her blood light on fire. That little brat got here before she did? Oh, she would make him rue the day he ever crossed her path. She walked into his chamber and saw him smirking at her. She wanted to zap it right off his face. "Well, what do you think, Winifred? I'm the champion of the Kanto region. I keep telling you you'd never measure up to me, and you never listened," he said. "Thy reign will be short-lived, Trask," Winifred promised, and Jeffrey raised a brow before sneering. "Figured it out, did you? I'm the embodiment of your old tormentor," he said, and his form shifted to that of Reverend Trask. "Let's forget the disguises, shall we?" Her teenage facade vanished, revealing her true form. "I'd say that's much better, but I'd be lying." "Funny. I was thinking the same of you," Winifred growled. "I figured out who you were several battles ago. Yours is not an ego I would soon forget. Now, let us proceed with this battle. It amazes me that you were able to come so far in this trial. But I know the truth. Thou art beyond redemption, no matter how much you fight for it. No matter how much you care for your wretched sisters, you will never be saved," he taunted her. "Even if it is hopeless for my soul, I will finally have my victory over thee for what thou tried to do to my family," Winifred said confidently. Without another word, the battle began. The first Pokemon Trask sent out was a Granbull, the same Pokemon she had named after Mary. Cobbler jumped into battle and opened with Shockwave. It only made a dent in the canine. Granbull used Takedown, and Cobbler's health plunged into the yellow range. Winifred's heart beat faster as she quickly healed her Jolteon, only to be smacked with Takedown again. For Cobbler's safety, she switched him out for Emerald, who dodged Takedown and unleashed Razor Leaf. The Granbull still survived, but the recoil from Takedown knocked it out. Winifred cheered for him proudly. Nidoqueen came in, and Winnie swapped Emerald for Susie. This was a risk, and she knew it. Nidoqueen hit Susie with Body Slam, damaging her by a little less than half, and paralyzed her. Winifred went to heal, but Susie yelled at her. She wanted her to wait, so Winifred agreed. She called for Susie to use Psychic, but Nidoqueen struck first with Superpower. Winifred held her breath as Susie plunged into the red range, but lived with 5 health points left. Psychic landed and almost knocked out the opponent. Now Winifred chose to heal as Trask got overconfident and had Nidoqueen use Poison Sting. Susie laughed it off and used Psychic, taking out her foe. Winnie cheered again, proud of her jinx. The next Pokemon was a normal type called Porygon 2. Winifred had a bad feeling about this one, so she swapped Susie for Eliza. Porygon 2 used Lock-On to make sure its next move hit, but Surf knocked it around too much and it had to use it again. Winifred decided this was the right strategy to use and called for Eliza to use Surf twice more, and the foe went down. Her pride in her team was high as Eliza slapped the water in her pond with her tail. Trask sent in Sea King, the Pokemon Winnie's Goldeen named Billy could have evolved into had it not been for that Regirock. She swapped in Emerald as it attempted to use the move Horn Drill. Winifred had read about this move in her Pokedex. If it landed, it was an instant kill. It missed, and Emerald used Giga Drain to restore his missing health. The Sea King still had 5 health points, and it used Horn Drill again. Winifred's heart stopped as the horn of the fish struck Emerald in the chest. He looked back at Winifred, smiled sweetly, then toppled to the floor, dead. Winifred's pride shattered as her oldest ally here was killed before her eyes in the battle she needed him the most. Her Meganium, her friend, was gone. She called him back, unable to speak, before opening the ball again to cradle him in her arms for one moment. She shed a few tears on his cold body before Trask's voice pierced her ears. "This fight is not finished yet, Winifred Sanderson. Either continue or forfeit." He healed the Sea King back to full health. "I would never surrender to thee," she yelled at him, and returned Emerald's body to his ball. She had to think. Who could do it? Cobbler was still too hurt from his fight with Granbull. She needed someone faster than the Sea King. Elena was her play here. She sent in her Pidgeot and called for her to use Fly. She dodged Horn Drill, then struck the Sea King. She had to keep up this tactic until Sea King ran out of Horn Drills. Fortunately, this didn't take long, so Winifred switched to Aerial Ace. They exchanged blows so fast it was hard to see their fight, until Sea King used Flail and killed Elena. Winifred screamed for her Pidgeot. A second Pokemon fell during her battle with Trask. The two made her think of Mary and Sarah and how this might have happened to them had Trask succeeded in separating them. She had no choice. She had to bring in Cobbler even though he was hurt. Before she could even open the ball herself, he burst from it and charged onto the battlefield. The fur on his body stuck up like needles, electricity coursing through each hair. He wanted vengeance for his teammates, just like she had wanted revenge for her sisters. She could almost see the small Eevee he once was in his angry face, and she thought of that fateful birthday that her life had changed forever. Cobbler was a reflection of herself, and that's how she knew he would end this. Trask healed again, and Winifred did the same. It was now or never. "Thunder attack!" she commanded. There was a high chance this move would fail, but Cobbler leapt into the air and unleashed a torrent of vengeance-fueled lightning into the Sea King, killing it in one shot. Cobbler landed in front of his trainer, fur sizzling as Croconaw came in. Winifred called for him to use Thunder again, and Cobbler used his supercharged lightning to pull off another one-shot. Trask's last Pokemon, and the one that tipped Winifred off to his disguise, was Ditto, the transforming Pokemon. It was the last one, and Winifred wanted to see Trask go down without a chance to move. "Cobbler! Thunder with every last ounce of power you possess! End this battle!" she yelled. Cobbler let out a loud battle cry, jumped into the air, sucked every ounce of static in the room into his body, and unleashed the most powerful thunder of all. Ditto felt the full force of their power as Trask was pushed backwards by the power of Winifred's Jolteon. When he looked at her, he saw the lightning reflecting in her eyes, and the monster he had created all those years ago. The Ditto was defeated. The battle was over, and Winifred stood victorious. Trask's time as her rival was over, and he faded from the champion's chamber, leaving Winifred alone with her Pokemon. A strange power burst into the room and settled on Elena and Emerald's Pokeballs. They opened themselves, and the two were alive again. All of the Pokemon she caught appeared in the chamber, even those that had perished previously. Mary the Granbull ran up and hugged her. Winifred fell to her knees as Mary backed off. Her 6 teammates surrounded her, hugging her in their own unique ways. She'd done it. She'd beaten the redemption trial. As she embraced her Pokemon, Professor Oak walked into the room clapping. "Congratulations, Winifred! You defeated the champion! Not only that, you defeated the worst demon from your past. I knew this would be the proper final battle for you. Your team here will be recognized in our Hall of Fame right next to your sisters' teams." Winifred saw 2 pictures on the wall. The first of Sarah with her team. The second photo was of Mary with a team even Winifred would feel intimidated by. A Blastoise, Ampharos, Exeggutor, Mightyena, Charizard, and the legendary Pokemon Rayquaza. She and her team were honored in the same way. Professor Oak collected her Pokedex, and Winnie was all too happy to hand it over. Oak examined it, then put the device in his pocket. "Your time here has reached an end, Winifred. Time for you to go," he said. "Wait, please. My Pokemon must come with me," she protested. He sighed. "Your sister said the same thing to me. Had your trial gone as smoothly as Mary's, I would have permitted you taking 2 Pokemon. But since it did not, you may only take 1 with you." "Only 1?" Winifred felt her heart sink. She prepared to take Emerald when he saw him pushing Cobbler forward with his nose. "Emerald, are you sure?" Emerald looked at her other Pokemon and gave a confident look, as if to tell her he needed to protect the others. Besides, without Cobbler, Winifred would have lost. "I shall miss thee." She hugged Emerald around the neck, and he rested his head on her back. She hugged Eliza, then Susie, then Elena, then Pixie. She told her friends she loved them, then looked at Cobbler. "Let's go home, Cobbler." He wagged his bottom excitedly. Together, Winifred and Cobbler were lifted from the ground, and their bodies turned slowly to dust. Winifred bid farewell to her Pokemon one last time before calling out to her sisters. Everything went dark. When she opened her eyes, she was in her room, and Cobbler was sleeping right next to her. She stroked his coarse fur lovingly, and he stirred. He gave her a small lick before both of them jumped up. "We're home!" she realized, then hurried down the stairs. There they were. "Sisters! Winnie!" they exclaimed and ran to hug her. "Oh, Winnie, you finished your trial!" Mary cheered. "It took 2 tries like mine, but you did it!" Sarah hopped up and down excitedly. "You must tell us about it," Mary insisted. "Where is thy Pokemon? I wish to see it," Sarah gasped. "Of course, sisters, of course," Winifred beamed. She whistled, and Cobbler came bounding down the stairs. "Sisters, this is Cobbler, my Jolteon, without whom I would have lost my final battle." "Oh, thou hast chosen an evolution as well!" Sarah exclaimed. "As well?" Winifred asked. "Carlos, come here, boy!" Sarah called, and her Glaceon dashed over from the hearth. "This is my Glaceon. It is an ice-type evolution of Eevee." "Oh my, what a handsome boy!" Winifred complimented her choice. Cobbler and Carlos sniffed at each other before rubbing their heads together. "Seems they will get along just fine. Mary, where are yours? Oak said you did so well you brought home 2. "Oh, right! Cabby, Brutus!" Mary called. Her Mightyena darted over and nearly tackled Winifred. Brutus caught her from behind as he walked into the room. "Cabby, down!" "I am surprised thou did not bring home thy legend," Winifred said. "Broomy needed to stay behind," Mary said, reflecting on her final moments together with him. They spent the entire day sharing their stories with each other, but that night they were summoned together to partake in another redemption test of different proportions. They were to ferry souls to the afterlife by making the right decisions to move them forward. To see how that went, check out the Sanderson sisters play Man of Medan. The end.